The Betrayal. The Valley of the End. An ancient battleground to two gods of shinobi, also a place where ideals clashed. The valley was like a large scar upon the land, a titanic clash that shook the boundaries of the ninja world and beyond. Madara Uchiha engaged his old friend and rival Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, in a battle to the death to decide who would be the Hokage and lead the village of their dreams, the dreams they created as children. Armed with the power of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and the Kyuubi no Kitsune as his pet, Madara could very well win if he was battling a normal opponent. Hashirama Senju was known as the god of shinobi, the strongest man in the world. The Hokage was known for having a powerful Keki Genkai. The wood release by simultaneously using water release and earth release was the Senju leader able to create forests and jungles in a barren landscape. The wood release also allowed him to restrain and control Biju, tailed beasts, chakra monsters, whatever you want to call them. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, one of the Nun Biju and the most powerful among them, was used as a tool by a human with amazing visual prowess. If there was one thing the Kyuubi hated, it was humans. If there was one thing the Kyuubi despised, it was the Sharingan, the damn copy will I. Put these two together, and you have something the Kyuubi loathed with all its being. The giant fox with its massive 9 tails that could crush mountains and create tsunamis, with its breath that could forge hurricanes or produce infernos, would never allow itself to be subjugated, especially to an Uchiha. It would not become like the rest of its brethren, caged. However, that's exactly what happened, and now it was helpless unless someone freed it from its chains. History was repeating itself yet again. The descendants of the two sons of the Rakuto Sennin, sage of 6 paths, were spilling blood again thanks to their different ideals. The older son's belief that power secured peace became the curse of hatred that most, if not all, Uchiha would inherit, while the younger son's belief that love was the true way to achieve peace transformed into the will of fire, an ideal that all in the Hidden Leaf Village would learn and accept. The two powerhouses assaulted each other with powers none thought were capable. Cutting mountains, splitting the landscape, and overall destruction was what created the valley. But even with the power of the Kyuubi under his belt and the strength of the Sharingan at his beckon, Madara lost the battle, stabbed in the back by a man that was once his friend, betrayed by his clan, his family, seen as a pariah who would rekindle the flames of war, called the person that stole his brother's eyes, had lost everything when he felt the cold metal of a sword pierce his chest. In remembrance of the conflict that happened all those years ago, 2 statues were erected, one of Hashirama and the other of Madara, holding the seal of confrontation, the place where Hashirama Senju defeated the Kyuubi, and the place where Madara died. Or so everyone thought. Present day. The valley was quiet. Nothing could be heard, except for the loud chirping of birds emanating from within the valley itself. Sasuke Uchiha, the last loyal Uchiha of Konohagakure, had fled his village in order to gain power from Orochimaru of the Sannin. The reason why he was joining the treacherous snake was so he could become stronger to kill his older brother Itachi and avenge his clan that were massacred by said brother. He knew that at his current level he could never defeat Itachi even with the cursed seal of heaven, and he knew it. So he sought ever more power. Sasuke also left for other reasons, such as his teammate, Naruto Uzumaki, becoming stronger than him in a few months, and if there was one thing Sasuke disliked, it was being weak compared to other combatants, especially the dead last of his academy years. Naruto Uzumaki was a hyperactive, unpredictable, knucklehead blonde ninja that wore a hideous orange jumpsuit that screamed, "Kill me." How he was able to evade the Chunin and the Anbu of the village was a total mystery to everyone. Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. The massive fox the size of the Hokage mountain was sealed into him when he was a newborn by the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. The blonde had been ostracized his entire life. He would be subjected to glares of hatred and fear, or his entire existence would be ignored altogether, along with the rare beatings he would get from the villagers. So he created a psychological mask to hide his pain and anger, and later that mask became his personality. Naruto's skill as a shinobi wasn't very good to begin with. The teachers at the academy would tamper with his tests and sabotage his learning. Only Iruka was willing to teach him. while Iruka was one of the only people to acknowledge Naruto's existence and see him as him instead of the fox. But now he was at the mercy of a comrade that was like his brother. When Sasuke left the village, Tsunade, the Godame Hokage assigned recently promoted Shikamaru Nara to create a retrieval team to bring Sasuke back, taught the village. Although she preferred to lock up the spoiled brat or give him a massive beating. Shikamaru brought along a highly capable team of genin. Kiba Inuzuka, a heavy hitter and great tracker. Choji Akimichi, just your well-rounded ninja, though not too bright. Niji Hyuga, the prodigy of the Hyuga clan. His Byakugan would be a major asset, and our favorite blonde ninja Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. They pursued Sasuke endlessly through the Land of Fire, where each squad mate sacrificed themselves to battle the members of the Sound Four. But some unforeseen complications arose with the arrival of Kimimaro Kagaya. Naruto wasn't a challenge to subordinate of Orochimaru, and he was wasting time by battling him. He had to get to Sasuke. But with the timely appearance of Rock Lee was he able to go after Sasuke directly without interference. And now we find ourselves at the current time and place. Sasuke holding up Naruto in his right hand with the power of the Curse Seal empowering him. A Chidori in his left hand, the signature technique of Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan Eye. Naruto was thoroughly dominated by the Sharingan user. He could barely fight back thanks to the speed and strength the Curse Seal gave the Uchiha. So many emotions were going through Naruto's head, sadness and anger the most prominent. As Sasuke, why? Asked Naruto as he felt his throat being crushed. The reason is simple. Naruto, it's because that pathetic village could offer me no more power to help me kill Itachi. Spoke the Uchiha. But right now I can get even more power. Saki started having flashbacks to what Itachi told him about the Mangekyo Sharingan, about how he needed to take the life of his best friend by taking your life in exchange for the Mangekyo. And with those words Sasuke rammed his Chidori through Naruto's heart. However, the blonde's own thoughts occupied his attention away from the hand through his chest. Sasuke, I thought you were my brother. I was happy that there was someone like me out there. I wanted to be like you, strong and confident. All their eyes were on you, praising you. I wanted those eyes to look at me as well. We may have hated each other in the beginning, but I loved it. I loved competing against you. And someday, I wanted to be acknowledged by you. Sasuke, thought Naruto as his eyes closed. Sasuke removed his hand from Naruto's chest, an emotionless look on his face. He then tossed Naruto in the water and proceeded to the land of sound. Goodbye, Naruto, thought Sasuke as he spared one last glance at the valley. Tears were now visible, and they were falling freely from the Uchiha's eyes. He didn't notice that his Sharingan morphed into the Mangekyo. His Mangekyo consisted of 3 ellipses that converged on the pupil resembling an atom model. Taking the life of someone precious to you and regretting it was a price only an Uchiha could make. The Kyuubi was lying in its cage with the kanji for seal in the middle. Darkness was encroaching from every corner of Naruto's mind. The Kyuubi felt its own life slipping away with each passing second. The wound is too great for me to heal with my chakra. So this is how it ends, stupid brat. He got me killed, and now I'm going to die within your spawn Kushina. Curse you, Yondaime Hokage, for giving me this fate. I hope that pitiful village of yours was worth the price of your son. Shodame Hokage, your wretched will of fire has been extinguished, spat the Kyuubi to no one in particular. It closed its eyes as it died, its chakra discreetly dispersing around the world. As Naruto was floating above the river, a gaping hole within his chest, his thoughts were occupied by his pink-haired teammate. I'm sorry, Sakura. I wasn't able to bring him back. I just wanted to make you happy, and that I never got to tell you how I felt. Those were Naruto Uzumaki's final thoughts before the Shinigami claimed him and he drew his last breath of life. Unknown to anyone, there was a third party nearby. It watched the entire spectacle. This figure was wearing a black cloak emblazoned with red clouds. It had a Venus flytrap extension that covered its torso and head. It had short green hair and yellow eyes. One half of its body was completely white while the other half was black and lacked any facial features except a round eye. That was quite the fight. Shut up. That was the most one-sided fight I've ever seen. If only he called on the Kyuubi's chakra, he would have won. Compared to the power of Biju, Orochimaru's curse seal doesn't hold a candle to it. Spoke the plant, human thing. Although, this could present us with an invaluable opportunity. Spoke the black half. What do you mean? Inquired the white half. Although the Kyuubi's chakra has dispersed toward the corners of the world, its Jinchuriki's body is still, mostly intact, uttered the black half. Can you still elaborate? Asked the white half. I thought you were smarter than this. It doesn't matter. Jinchuriki are known to have massive supplies of chakra because their coils have to harden in order for their bodies to cope with the stress of the Biju's chakra, stated the black half. So this boy has large reserves of chakra. The black half seemed to sigh at its counterpart. Isn't that what it just said? Yes. The average chakra reserves for a Chunin-level Jinchuriki are greater than that of a Kage, said the black thing. However, there's more, because that Jinchuriki was among the last members of the Uzumaki clan. Continued the black half. Who were the Uzumaki clan again? Probed the white half. They were an extremely powerful shinobi clan of Fuinjutsu users, sealing jutsu. Answered the black half. Fuinjutsu, an extremely powerful ninja art. Spoke the white half. The Uzumaki also had great stamina and life force coupled with their extremely powerful and large chakra reserves. A Chunin-level Uzumaki had the chakra reserves of a Kage, and so on and so forth. I see. Then if this kid lived well into his adult years, he would have Biju-level chakra reserves, spoke the plant thing. However, there's more, said the black half, garnering the white half's attention. The Uzumaki were also an offshoot clan of the Senju, who broke away from the clan when they tired from the fighting with the Uchiha. They later fled to an island which they dubbed the Land of Whirlpools and created powerful seals and jutsu. However, they also had close ties with the Senju. This friendship was strengthened even further when Mito Uzumaki married Hashirama Senju. So this boy is a descendant of the younger son of the Rakuto Sennin. They said, I see now. If we were to bring the boy to him, he can get what we wants, and we can finally finish what he started. He could combine the sage's body and the sage's eyes, uttered the white half. Exactly. So shall we do it? Asked the white half, even though it already knew the answer. Yes. The plant man thing made its way down to the valley and walked across the water using its chakra, where it picked up Naruto's body that was still floating on the surface. It headed to the bank of the river where it melded with the ground and disappeared along with the body of Naruto. Kakashi Hitaki, prized student of the Yondaime Hokage, was running with the wind at his back, and desperation filled his heart. With him was his personal summons, a pug dog by the name of Pakin. It's not much farther, their scent is getting stronger, shouted Pakin. Good Pakin, I just hope we make it, said Kakashi, fear evident in his voice. Then the sight of the Valley of the End was in sight. However, it started to rain, which would complicate things for Kakashi. Double time, Kakashi, we're losing Sasuke's scent, yelled Pakin. At the rate they were going, they wouldn't be able to make it. Kakashi and Pakin burst forth from the tree line and gazed upon the valley. They made their way down into the basin at the feet between the two legendary shinobi. I'm sorry, Kakashi. I've lost his scent. The rain will wash away any trace of his scent, spoke Pakin dejectedly. But Kakashi didn't appear to hear him. The silver-haired man was searching the valley for any inkling of another person. Where's Naruto? Kakashi asked out loud. From what I can gather with my nose, Naruto's scent stops here. Even with the rain, I would still be able to get a general direction, but it's as I said, informed Pakin. It's likely that Naruto ended up in the river where his scent would be untraceable. Okay, Pakin, take the left side of the bank, and I will take the right. Bark when you find any sign of Naruto, commanded Kakashi. He had already lost one student. He wasn't going to lose another. The shinobi and his dog summons searched along the river for hours on end. They didn't find anything. In fact, they found nothing that can prove if Naruto was alive or dead. After 6 hours of scouring the banks of the river, they decided to head back to Konoha and see if any news on Naruto had survived. Or at least that was what Kakashi hoped for. Sasuke, Kabuto, and Orochimaru, who had recently traded bodies, were walking through their underground hovel. They passed by multiple people. Men, women, and children were locked behind bars, moaning and crying in pain and sorrow. Sasuke seemed unfazed by all the torture he was seeing. His own pain was far greater than theirs. I'm so glad you were able to make it to my base relatively unharmed. Sasuke-kun, drawled Orochimaru in his heavenly but vile voice. Just give me the power I desire, soon, spat Sasuke. Kabuto, who had been watching the interaction, was not impressed. Should I remind that you are speaking to Orochimaru-sama and that you should show proper respect? Snapped Kabuto as he grabbed Sasuke's shoulder, but flinched when he felt the intensity of the Uchiha's chakra. Such strong chakra, thought Kabuto as he shuddered from the touch. Yes, yes, he's the one that shall be my next vessel. These next 3 years in the future are going to be quite intriguing indeed, thought Orochimaru gleefully as he licked his lips. How right he is. Kakashi had just returned to Konoha where he met Sakura at the gate just like she was last time. When she asked where Sasuke and Naruto were, he responded with, I don't know. Kakashi also noted that the rain that was at the valley seemed to follow him all the way back to the village. As he walked to the Hokage Tower, people were running around taking shelter hopefully to escape the downpour. Kakashi himself was cold and drenched to his very core. His gravity-defying silver hair was downcast and dark. Even though you couldn't see his face, you could tell that Kakashi wasn't doing so well on the inside. When he reached the tower, he was about to knock, but hesitated at the last second. How would he tell Tsunade of Naruto's disappearance? He knew that she didn't care about Sasuke at all, but the blonde, orange-wearing knucklehead was like a son to her. How would she take the news? Gathering all his confidence, he knocked on her door twice. He heard it come in from the other side. When he entered, he saw Tsunade working behind her desk, a bottle of sake on her right side. But something wasn't right. She had bags under her amber eyes as if stress had really gotten to her, and you could see some wrinkles on around her face. It seemed that she had dropped her special hinge just a little. Anything to report, Kakashi? She asked in a stalwart voice, snapping Kakashi from his wandering eyes. Yes, Tsunade-sama. I tracked the scent of Sasuke Uchiha with my personal ninkin, Pakin. We found the scent when it started to rain that eventually diluted his scent, making it untraceable. Reported Kakashi. Tsunade noted that something seemed off about his report, like something was eating at him. She looked down at her desk. She pondered asking this question, but she needed to know. And what of Naruto? Kakashi didn't say anything, but a red flag popped up in his head. What do you mean? Didn't Naruto arrive with the rest of his squad mates? Asked Kakashi fearfully. Tsunade seemed to deflate at this. He wasn't found with the others? Asked Kakashi, fearing the answer. No. Please tell me. Tell me, Kakashi, did you find any trace of him? Implored Tsunade. No. Pakin and I searched the valley and the riverside, and we found no remnants of Naruto, only his scent which stopped at the valley. But Sasuke also wasn't there, but he's alive, replied Kakashi. I don't care about the spoiled Uchiha. Where is Naruto? Tell me, roared Tsunade. Spoke Kakashi, but he was interrupted by the arrival of a new voice. He's dead. Kakashi and Tsunade turned to see Jiraiya sitting on the windowsill, his arms crossed, and he was angry unbelievably, so his visage was marred in an eternal sneer. What? The two other ninjas said at the same time. Thunder struck in the background, creating a sense of foreboding. It's true, I was contacted by Fukasakusama telling me that Naruto's name was taken off the summoning registration board at Myobokuzen. He really is dead, said Jiraiya angrily. And he was killed by Sasuke Uchiha. Jiraiya spat the name like it was venom in his mouth. Stuttered Kakashi, but he was silenced by Jiraiya. Shut up. Remember back on the hospital roof on how you berated me on trying to teach Naruto how to protect himself, for he would need it when the Akatsuki would come after him, growled Jiraiya. But what did you teach Sasuke? That's right, you taught him a bunch of fire jutsus and the Chidori, a jutsu designed for killing. You may have sealed the cursed seal's dark effects, but you gave him the power to wield. It almost sounds like you wanted Sasuke to use that power. Kakashi just looked down at the floor in guilt. You didn't even bother to learn what nature affinity Naruto had. You just pushed him to the side and gave him to someone that openly despised him, while you taught the Uchiha how to properly kill someone, scolded Jiraiya. Minato never showed favoritism, not to you or any of your other teammates. This just proves to me that you're not fit to be a sensei, and now Minato's legacy is dead, all because you weren't bothered to teach him. I can understand because of Obito, but still the level of attention to Naruto was barely minimal. Jiraiya's words was like a sword piercing Kakashi's heart. The only thing you did teach him was to climb trees with your chakra, which is the basic necessity for all ninja, and all those useless teamwork exercises. Look how that turned out. I'm the only person that really taught him anything. I taught him one of his father's treasured jutsu, the Rasengan, and you berate me for teaching him what was rightfully his. Jiraiya nearly shouted. Tsunade didn't choose to intervene because Kakashi needed to hear this. She agreed on Jiraiya's assessment. Even though Sarutobi praised Orochimaru, he never showed any favoritism to him, or her, or Jiraiya. You can add this to the list of all the failures you have made in your life. You failed Minato, you failed Kushina, and you also failed Obito and Rin. Jiraiya stopped his verbal assault and turned toward the window. Minato would be disappointed, Kushina would be disappointed, Sarutobi Sensei would be disappointed. They would all be disappointed in you. I hope you have the guts to face them when it's your time to go, said Jiraiya as he jumped away from the Hokage tower. Hokage-sama, said Kakashi. Just leave. I want you out of my sight this instant. Don't show your face to me in another week, ordered the Hokage. Kakashi didn't look up, he just dragged himself out of the office. If you would look closely, you could see tears falling freely like a waterfall. Tsunade had her hands intertwined together, her eyes were overshadowed by her hair. Silent tears were crawling down from her eyes as she silently cried. Her cursed necklace had taken another one of her precious people, the boy who was like a son to her. She sobbed for hours because she wouldn't hear the hyperactive blonde's voice again. She wouldn't see the hideous orange jumpsuit he loved to wear. She would never see his big foxy smile, the smile that filled her with happiness, happiness that she would never feel again. She blames Sasuke, and she also blames Kakashi. But no matter how many people she would blame, nor how many times, it couldn't bring the whiskered blonde back to her. Kakashi was on his way to the memorial stone. He would go there every day to speak to his best friend Obito Uchiha, the person that gave him the Sharingan. Jiraiya's words hit him hard, but he was right. He failed Minato, he failed Kushina, he failed Rin, he failed Obito, and now he failed Naruto. Kakashi's life were only filled with failures. Kakashi Sensei, the copycat ninja, looked up and saw his last remaining student, Sakura Haruno. The pink-haired girl looked worried, like there was something on her mind that always seemed to bother her. Yo, Sakura, said Kakashi, downcast in sadness. Where's Naruto and Sasuke-kun? She asked curiously. He couldn't tell her here, not in the middle of a street. Follow me to the memorial stone, uttered Kakashi. Sakura nodded and followed after her sensei. When they reached the memorial stone, they didn't say anything until Sakura brought up a conversation to speak about. Kakashi-sensei, I've been thinking lately. She said, her eyes never left the stone that was in front of her. When I was waiting at the gates for Naruto and his team to come back, Ino asked me something. She asked me who I was waiting for, and I answered Naruto. I was waiting for him and not Sasuke-kun. She continued. Kakashi just listened to her now, telling her that Naruto was dead, was becoming harder, and his guilt was weighing heavily on him. I then started thinking about Naruto and all he's done for me. I was so cruel to him when he just wanted to be my friend. I berated him when he brought up an idea, and when Sasuke-kun suggested the same thing, I praised him for it, and not Naruto. I then remembered his promise to me. I could see he was hurt when I asked him to bring Sasuke back. I don't know whether he was hurt because he saw me so sad or whether it hurt him because he thought my heart belonged to someone else. But when he put aside his own feelings for my own, I was so happy. Happy because he was so selfless and caring. Now that I think about it, he never treated me in a bad way. To Kakashi, this was just becoming harder and harder with every word she said. I then remembered a time when we were younger. I was being bullied by these boys who were making fun of my forehead, but Naruto came over and defended me. Eventually, the boys beat him up. If it wasn't for my mom who came around the corner, they would continue beating him, so she stopped the boys hitting Naruto. But when she saw that it was him, she turned away and took my hand, saying to stay away from him. I was too young to understand. Maybe I'll never understand. Kakashi just let a few stray tears escape his eyes, knowing what her mother meant by stay away from him. Later, I became the one who would verbally hurt Naruto and put him down to make myself feel better. Sakura, Kakashi said, but she continued. When we became a Genin team, I was so happy that I was on Sasuke-kun's team. Later, I was sitting alone by myself when I saw Sasuke-kun. He complimented me on the one thing I hated, my forehead. But now when I look back at our time as a team, I realized that Sasuke would never say that to me, but it was something that Naruto would say. And now that I look back, I figured something out, that the one I truly love, the one that would sacrifice anything for me, even his own happiness, the one that stood by me the whole time is Naruto. I love Naruto, and when he comes back I'll tell him that, and then I'll share my feelings with him. She said with pure determination. I used to think that I knew what love was, but it was just some wayward crush. True love is putting one's happiness above your own, and that's what Naruto would do for me in a heartbeat. But I want to be happy with him. This was too hard for Kakashi. He would have to tell she deserved to know. So when will Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun be back? She asked with unrestrained glee. That's the problem, Sakura, said Kakashi. The pink-haired girl was confused. Why was Kakashi so sad? There were complications on the retrieval mission, spoke Kakashi with his head still down. What do you mean? She was fearing the worst. What did Kakashi know that she didn't? Naruto is dead. Those words seemed to shatter glass. No, it can't be, she muttered as she took some steps back. Her eyes were now watering, and she felt this pain in her chest like someone clenching her heart. He was killed by Sasuke. That was the final nail in the coffin as Sakura's waterworks started to flow. She ran out of the training ground, leaving Kakashi alone. Kakashi didn't make a glance at the memorial stone. He was just filled with guilt. He dropped to his knees as his tears started again. Minato-sensei, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I failed to protect your son, said Kakashi as he freely sobbed. Noon had ever seen this side of Kakashi, not since Obito died. Shikamaru Nara was waiting in the hospital. No news had come in from his teammates. Even worse, there was no news on Naruto. He battled a powerful member of Orochimaru's elite followers. She used summons and a strange flute. If it wasn't for the arrival of Gaara's sister Temari, then he would be dead. The only injury he suffered was a broken finger. He saw something in the corner of his eye. Tsunade, the Godame Hokage, walking towards him. He could see visible tear streaks. Shikamaru, we need to talk. She now had his undivided attention. It's about Naruto. Hope seemed to fill Shikamaru until it was knocked down by the news she gave him. It can't be no. No, he shouted within the hospital. I will call a council meeting, and then I will inform the village. I'm truly sorry, she said as she started crying again. She turned her back on the young Nara as kept chanting no. The council room was filled up. The semicircle-like table was in the middle with the heads of the respective shinobi council on the left and the civilian council on the right with the elders in the middle. Then Tsunade walked in slowly, her head down, which seemed to spark something in the minds of the shinobi council and the elders. Why have you called us today, Tsunade-sama? Asked Koharu Udatane, one of the Hokage's advisors. I came to inform you of the results of the retrieval team tasked with capturing Sasuke Uchiha and returning him to the village, she said emotionlessly. So has Uchiha-sama been returned to the village? Asked a fat member of the civilian council. No, the mission was a failure. It resulted with a shinobi being mildly injured, to another that would require care for a few weeks, 2 critically injured, and 1 death. So who were the shinobi that were wounded? Asked another civilian member. The one that was mildly wounded was Shikamaru Nara. The other that would require some treatment is Kiba Inuzuka, and the 2 that were critically injured were Choji Akimichi and Niji Hyuga, informed Tsunade. And who was the one death? Asked Hayashi Hyuga, generally curious. Naruto. Uzumaki. He was killed by Sasuke Uchiha, choked Tsunade. When the civilian council heard the news, they immediately started to cheer, happy that the demon was gone and that Uchiha-sama saved us. When the shinobi council heard this, they were both saddened and repulsed. Saddened by the blonde's passing because they believed he was a pure soul who couldn't do anything that would make him evil. Because they weren't idiots, they knew the difference between a kunai and the scroll it was sealed into. And they were repulsed by the civilian council's total disregard to the blonde's life. The elders were worried. They had lost their Jinchuriki. Their military power had taken a nosedive. If word spread to the other nations that Konoha had lost its Jinchuriki, then the other nations may attack. Tsunade was barely controlling her anger at the stupidity of the civilians, until one of them asked a stupid question. Hokage-sama, we the civilian council request that a statue be erected to honor Uchiha-sama's great deed. Shut up? No, I will never create a statue for that spoiled brat. He just abandoned the village. joined Orochimaru, and killed the Konoha Nin, and I the Go-Dame Hokage hereby declare Sasuke Uchiha a wanted nuke Nin," announced Tsunade, her anger overweighing her sadness. "The Shinobi Council second this declaration," said Shikaku Nara. All this other shinobi clan heads nodded at this. Later the village was informed of Naruto's death and Sasuke's defection. Half the village were cheering and throwing parties in celebration of the death of the demon, while the other half were sorrowful because the blonde had done so much for them already. When Gaara heard the news, he was crushed. The first person that treated him like someone worthy of existence was dead. He made a vow that he would strive to become great to serve Naruto's legacy. He would not allow revenge to consume, but should he come across Sasuke Uchiha, he would not hesitate to kill him. Iruka was angry and sad, but mainly angry. The person that was like a younger brother to him was dead, and the idiotic villagers were celebrating. He knew what kind of life Naruto led. He acknowledged his suffering. But he was even more disappointed that Naruto's death was at the hands of another of his students. He decided to lock himself in his apartment, and no one had seen the scarred Chunin for a whole week before he revealed himself. To everyone around him, he was a mess. He had bags under his eyes and his cheeks, and eyes were red and puffy, probably from all the crying. Out of everyone that was informed of Naruto's death, Konohamaru took it the hardest. He locked himself in his room and hardly came out for a week until Naruto's funeral. The whiskered boy was like an older brother to him, but now he was gone, just like his grandfather, the Sandaime Hokage. He wasn't for a long time. The smell of ramen didn't jolt him from his depression, and even the mention of Naruto's name around him made his depression worse and worse with each beating second. He hadn't felt like this since the death of his grandfather when Orochimaru invaded the village with help from Suna. It was always raining after Naruto's death. It rained non-stop as if the heavens were weeping that such a pure soul was gone. Everyone that liked Naruto or had met him in person attended except Kakashi, where he wasn't invited, and Jiraiya because it was too painful for him. The people that did attend were all the Konoha genin in the last Chunin exams along with their proctors and senseis. Even the Sand siblings went. The funeral lasted for a few hours where everybody started to leave, but one person stayed. This person was Konohamaru Sarutobi. He just looked at the tombstone without a body. "I promise that your sacrifice won't be in vain. I will continue your legacy and become stronger for your sake, Naruto Nizan," said Konohamaru as he made a promise he intended to keep. At Myobokuzen, the elder sage was in deep thought. How could someone like Naruto die so early? He secretly knew that Naruto was the child he spoke about in his prophecies. So why did the world think he was dead? Unless another force may have a hand in bringing Naruto back, and the elder knew that whatever it wasn't good. In a dark place stood a man with metallic purple eyes, with concentric rings surrounding his pupil. However, his body was distorted and it appeared like a rainbow. Then images of other people with different eyes, but the same distorted, appeared around him. All of them had one thing in common: they had black cloaks with red clouds on them. "How long has it been since we were all together like this?" asked a tall man with beady eyes. 7 years, not since Orochimaru left the organization to pursue his idiotic goals, said a hunched person. "So Orochimaru has the Sharingan. Hey Itachi, isn't that your little brother?" Said another member. Itachi didn't visibly react to this jab, nor did he speak in any other way. "The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is dead," said the plant-like member among them. "Really, Zetsu? Who killed the Kyuubi Jinchuriki?" demanded the member with the ripple-like eyes in a dangerous voice. "It was Sasuke Uchiha, Itachi's brother," answered the plant man, now identified as Zetsu. "If you had only killed your brother the night of the massacre, the Kyuubi would still be alive. Instead, its chakra is dispersed, which has set us back by years," reprimanded another with green eyes. Itachi didn't say anything, but his thoughts were different. "Foolish little brother, you have made the greatest mistake anyone could make in your shoes," thought Itachi as he closed his eyes. "We will just have to wait until the Kyuubi reforms, although that will take about 5 years. Until then, we extract the rest of the Biju. But the Kyuubi must be sealed last, or else the plan will fail. Now go and use the time you have now to train yourselves until we face the Jinchuriki," commanded the person that seemed to be the leader. All the illusionary bodies then began to disappear, except for Itachi. "Naruto, I don't believe that you are dead, and if so then, Where are you? Thought Itachi as his illusionary body also disappeared. A lone man, withered man, was sitting upon a tree-like throne. He had light gray hair that went down to his waist, and two shoulder-length bangs. One covered his right eye entirely. He wore a black robe that covered most of his body, except for his back, which had 3 tubes connected to a massive statue. He was completely skinny, and his face had many wrinkles along with a single visible Sharingan eye. He also had the remnants of an old Kusarigama that acted like a cane. He seemed immobile. If anyone saw him, they would assume he wasn't breathing. This man had seen and participated in thousands of battles. He had witnessed death in every corner of his vision. But yet it didn't affect him at all. He had lost too much to war, too much to hatred. He was once called a god, but now he was nothing more than a dusty scroll who had both of his feet in the grave but refused to die. How long has it been since he saw sunlight, since he smelled the forests around him? To him, time had no meaning, no purpose. He was just waiting, but for what exactly he didn't know. He hadn't seen the face of another person for he doesn't care how long. He seemed to be taken out of his thoughts as his subordinate, Zetsu, rose up from the ground. His flytrap was the first thing he saw, but he quickly took notice of a bundle of cloth in Zetsu's arms. The bundle was large, but not too big, and it wasn't tiny, but it was small compared to Zetsu. Zetsu, breathed the man hoarsely. What are you doing here, and what is that in your arms? Questioned the withered man as he pointed his scythe at the cloth. The reason why I'm here is because of what I'm carrying, answered Zetsu. He laid the bundle down on the ground carefully in front of the old man, to which the skeleton narrowed his lone, visible eye. The man picked up his Kusarigama and used the blade to unwrap the wad. What he saw made his eyes narrow even more in suspicion. It was a boy. Well, to be more precise, it was a dead boy with a gaping hole in his chest. This boy had sun-kissed blonde hair that was wild and untamed. He couldn't see his eyes because they were closed. He had 3 distinct whisker-like marks on each cheek, and he was wearing a repugnant orange jumpsuit. That just disgusted him to no end. Tell me, Zetsu, why did you bring me this corpse? Inquired the mummy with a melancholic look. You always wanted someone to continue your plans, and I have found someone who could guarantee that. Respond Zetsu happily as if nothing bothered him. I would have preferred someone whose blade had pierced flesh and taken life away, and more importantly, if his heart was beating, barked the old man, who then started having coughing fits. But what if I told you that this boy is a former Jinchuriki who also descends from the Uzumaki clan? Replied Zetsu. Now the man was intrigued. He knew everything about the Uzumaki clan, especially their blood ties to the Senju and their amazingly powerful chakra. Oh, he was also killed by an Uchiha for the Mangekyo, stated Zetsu matter-of-factly. The old man didn't care. Interesting, said the man. A member of the Uzumaki clan and also former Jinchuriki. Intriguing. He could become an extremely powerful shinobi. If taught correctly, this could present me with the opportunity to continue it. So you assume that if I return his life, then persuade him to become part of my plan, he could become an extraordinarily powerful asset that could further my goals? Queried the old man, where he received a nod from the colored thing in front of him. Very good, Zetsu. The man shifted his eyes toward the body of Naruto. But tell me, what of his skill level? Asked the wilted man. From what I was able to gather, he knows the basic ninjutsu from the academy. But he has 3 powerful jutsu in his arsenal. But don't bother with Jinjutsu. With his chakra levels, he would be unable to perform Jinjutsu. However, I don't know about Taijutsu, explained Zetsu. The white half seemed to be happy that he was pleasing his master. The other didn't seem to care. And what would be these ninjutsu? Responded the parched man. He knows the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and the Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Also, he knows a powerful rank ninjutsu that took its creator 3 years to develop, but it took him 1 week to master. Claimed the 2 halves. Now the old shinobi was knee-deep in getting his hands on the boy. It didn't matter how much natural talent you had or how hard you worked. If you had the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, it wouldn't matter, for you could learn 1 year's worth of experience in 6 months. And a jutsu he mastered in a week, and a ranked jutsu. He had a lot of potential from what Zetsu was telling him. You truly brought me a diamond among rocks, Zetsu. My faith is not given out easily, but you have earned it. His lone Sharingan shifted into a purple eye with multiple rings around his pupil resembling a ripple pattern. He went through a few hand seals before stopping at the snake seal and focused his chakra intensely. Geto, Rinne Tensei no Jutsu. A demonic head faded through the ground. It was surrounded by a purple aura and had the kanji for king on its forehead. It opened its mouth and out came a single wisp of green energy which ensnared Naruto's body. It instantly healed his wound where his heart should have been. However, there was a scar over his heart that seemed to look like lightning sparking away from the point of impact. Madara knew that if he wasn't directly connected to the statue, he would die. A few seconds passed, and one could hear heavy breathing coming from Naruto. He was alive, but he was unconscious. He will not awaken for a few more days, so? Zetsu began a blood transfusion. Zetsu nodded at his master's command and readied the necessary things required for a transfusion. A few hours later, the transfusion was a complete success. The man's blood was now running through this boy's veins, granting him the old man's gifts to be the boy's own. So tell me, Zetsu, of the Uchiha that killed him. The old man was curious, but he needed Zetsu to confirm his suspicions. Who could I tell him, please? Begged the white half to its black counterpart. Knowing that its other half was going to interrupt when it talked, the black half just let it speak whatever was on its mind. Fine. Well, the Uchiha was just, and he. That's right, he left his village to join up with a Nukenin. What was his name? Oro Oregano. Said the white half, trying to place a name. Orochimaru. Answered the black half. They've seen the man before, and they were just at a meeting discussing his actions. How could it forget? The name is easy to remember. Yeah, that's it. Who is this? Orochimaru? He spoke the white man before he was interrupted by the black one. He was the former student of the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. During the Second Great Shinobi War, he aided his village greatly along with his two teammates Jiraiya and Tsunade Senju. The old man scowled at the name Senju as if someone had just kicked his puppy. They later fought an icon of the shinobi world, Hanzo no Sanshuo, where the old ninja would spare the three of them and give them the title of Densetsu no Sannin. Later, Orochimaru performed ghastly experiments on children, where he would later flee his village and become a criminal. He was also the orchestrator of the Konoha invasion. I informed you of where he assassinated the Yondaime Kazekage and tried to assassinate the Sandaime Hokage, his former teacher. But he was barely able to kill the old Hokage despite the fact that Sarutobi lost much of his power thanks to old age. Orochimaru even went as far to revive his two predecessors, but their power was being limited at the time. Even still, the Sandaime came out on top when he sealed the two Hokage and took away the ability to wield hand seals by sealing Orochimaru's arms. This Orochimaru was barely able to kill Tobirama's monkey, even when old age had affected him, and he couldn't kill this Hanzo, a shinobi from some backwash village, even with two others, among them a Senju. The old ninja was quickly gathering his thoughts. Orochimaru doesn't sound like much of a great shinobi. I know that Sarutobi is strong. He may be stronger than Tobirama, but he is still far from comparing to Hashirama's or my own level in power. My future student would become much greater of a threat than his pet of an Uchiha, said the man as he chuckled darkly. A few days later, Naruto awoke, and he saw nothing but darkness. He adjusted his eyes to become accustomed to the rare light in the dark place. Where am I? Am I dead? Whispered Naruto to the void, hoping for someone to answer him. He just wanted to hear a voice that would assure him, to ease him. He believed himself to be dead, but was he truly? Then a voice cut through the air like a knife through butter. In the realm between that which is eternal. Naruto looked up and saw the oldest man he had ever seen. This guy topped the Sandaime Hokage in old age easily, and he was standing over him like a statue. This guy, he has Sasuke's eyes. Is he an Uchiha like him? Thought Naruto as he stared at the man with half-lidded eyes. His whole body was numb. He couldn't really move. He couldn't feel anything other than the air and dust on his skin. A realm between that which is eternal. Just what kind of place is it? Queried the blonde as he stared at the man, tired and numb. The light did not obey Naruto's whim as the realm was dark, too dark. A realm of nothingness would be precise, answered the withered man. A place that sits between two higher powers. Naruto stared at him some more, taking in his words. Just where was he? How did he end up in this place? I can't remember much now that AIT. He paused in his sentence when it all came rushing back to him. The mission to retrieve his friend, his promise to Sakura, his death. Sasuke, shouted Naruto as he pulled himself up. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. He chanted, clutching the area above his heart. But, what? I don't feel any pain. Where's the wound? Then he noticed something strange. There was a strange lightning-like scar over his chest where his heart should be. Also, he was naked. Then he looked back at the old man again. I have healed your wounds and restored your life. If you can feel your heart pumping, that is a sign that you're alive. Spoke the old man as Naruto just stared at him with open eyes, but he trailed his eyes downward to see the man holding an old scythe, which glinted a little. No, you're a Shinigami who's brought me back to life, so to take me to hell, please. Please, I want to live. Screamed Naruto in a girly way. Okay, sorry if I took those pervy magazines, they're not mine, I swore they're Kiba's. The old man's sweat dropped at the blonde's behavior. Just how did perverted magazines matter? I am not the Shinigami young Uzumaki, and you are not dead. Yet, although I am a Shinigami, in a way, said the old man with a small smirk. Naruto examined the old man. This guy looked like some old bat who would argue with his wife. But still. So you saved me, old man. Thanks. Thanked Naruto, who was generally happy to be alive. But a thought came to him. No. Please tell me you're not some shinobi pedo like that Orochimaru team. He screamed at the top of his lungs while anime tears cascaded down his face. I don't swing that way. Someone please save me. I am not a pedo, young Uzumaki, stated the withered man with a hint of anger at the rudeness and idiocy of the blonde before him. Oh, and if you aren't a pedo, then where are my clothes? Asked / yelled Naruto. I burned them. Deadpanned the old man, which broke Naruto's stupor, and instead, he started crying anime tears over his beloved jumpsuit. While Naruto was thinking, did he have to burn my underwear? The underwear had little frogs on them. They were meant to be burned. But still, it's far too early to thank me. This garnered the blonde's attention. And I'm sure you have some nindo that you abide by. Naruto was about to answer him, but he was cut off. Don't answer that, I just know I'm right. Naruto looked at the man quizzically, and he was right, he did have a nindo. You just seem like the type that won't go back on his word. Naruto sighed at him. His body was still numb, but at least he could move in a way. Sorry, old man. But I can't stay, my friends are counting on me, and I have to be there for them. Spoke Naruto with slight determination. Besides, I have to fulfill a promise I made to someone important to me. Naruto eased himself slowly off the bed, but the moment he tried to balance himself on his feet, he fell, and the blanket covering his body was still hiding his lower regions. I have to return home. I have to. My friends need to know I'm alive. A promise you must fulfill, huh? Sighed Madara, as he watched Naruto scrambling on the cold ground. I have just brought you back to life. Your muscles and internal organs are just starting to function again. It will take some time to fully recuperate from your revival, and if you move around more, you'll only damage yourself even more, and you may die again. No, I can't give up. I don't care if you revive me, I will return to Konoha. Grunted Naruto as he tried to pick himself up off the floor, but failed, for his body was still too weak, and he could feel this pain inside him like his stomach was twisting itself. The old man sighed as he continued to watch the boy try and fail to leave the dark hovel. But the blonde could barely lift himself up off the floor, and he would kill himself unless he got rest. Why do you repeat the same action but expect a different result? Asked the man as he watched the boy continue to fail in his attempts. That he had to admit the child had determination. Because I don't give up and I always keep my word, for that's my shinobi way, yelled Naruto with nothing but unbreakable stubbornness. The man continued to stare at the boy. His sheer determination was admirable, and he had a strong will. You could always judge someone by just a glance, but to form an opinion on them was watching them in action. Those words are empty and not full of conviction. No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it. Spoke the man with wisdom. Saying something is far different than doing something. You have yet to realize that this is your birth by sleep, to wake up from this reality and accept what is before your eyes. But too. Naruto felt some stray tears prickling at the corners of his eyes as he lay on the dirty ground, his face buried on the cold floor. He was helpless, and he couldn't get back to his friends no matter what he tried. He couldn't leave, so he reined his composure and accepted that he wasn't going anywhere for now until he had recovered. The old man placed his scythe/cane by the bed and helped Naruto back onto the bed gently. "Just who are you?" whispered Naruto as he laid back on the bed. He deserved to know the name of the person that brought him back to life at least. The man walked over and sat atop his root-like throne and cleared his throat, amassing the boy's attention. "As to who I am the ghost of the Uchiha. I am Madara Uchiha," said the man, now known as Madara, as light seemed to fill the dark. Naruto, with his eyes adjusting to the room, saw and beheld a large flower as tall as a mountain with a massive statue sitting in a lotus position with its hands chained together. And there were small tubes connecting the statue to the man. Naruto looked back at the legendary shinobi dumbly, and then he laughed. "Yeah, right, you're Madara Uchiha." As if Madara is dead. Madara's sweat dropped at the blonde. First of all, it was easier for him to believe that the old man was the Shinigami. Second, he originally thought he was a pedo. And third, he had the Sharingan. "Look into my eyes, Uzumaki." Naruto saw and beheld Sharingan eyes. One was hidden behind his bang. Naruto had forgotten about those eyes, where he chanted "stupid" multiple times in his head for not noticing them. "SSO, you are Madara Uchiha," stuttered Naruto as he peered into the blood-red eyes that reflected anger and hatred. "Yes, and I have also given you the power of the Uchiha clan," spoke Madara with little emotion. "Two can awaken the Sharingan?" asked Naruto with a hint of excitement. "Yes, and you can use the bloodline like any other Uchiha," replied Madara. "Cool," said Naruto with a small smile. "You know, old man, you ain't half bad." Naruto was smiling his foxy grin. He didn't care now. He could get those cool eyes, and maybe he could perform Genjutsu. Yes, but young Uzumaki, tell me, what do you think of this reality?" asked Madara. He needed to know if he was going to coerce the blonde to help him. "What do you mean?" inquired Naruto as his happy expression faded away. "What I mean is, what do you expect from this world?" pressed Madara. "Well, I expect love and friendship in this world, and hopefully a place where people would understand another and not have to fear and hate each other," responded Naruto, but Madara scoffed at the idea. "In this world, people don't get what they wish most, and that is a fact. We are subjected to the whims of this reality that is filled with suffering and hatred. When there is light, there is also darkness. One cannot exist without the other. This world is full of pain and futility. Those are the only things that exist in this reality," uttered Madara. "There are only winners and losers in this world, along with the selfish desires to create a lasting peace. But there can be no peace when the world is flooded by rage. The selfish desire of peace will only be temporary, and war will rise. Hatred is birthed from the protection of love, and more hatred will follow after it like vultures. Everything I have said is nexuses, bound together by an unbreakable chain that keeps adding on to its links. The chain cannot be broken, for we all wear it. There is nowhere to break the chain. Normally. What you say has some truth to it," muttered Naruto as he looked away from Madara. "I hate this world. I loathe it with every cell in my body. This world is hell, and I have been condemned to live in it. Only the powerful decide fate, and not the weak. Without strength, you will become a slave to those who are. I have cheated death too many times to know that I am strong enough to decide my fate, but still I'll be dead soon, for immortality doesn't truly exist. But even still, the strong can only do so much when compared to the power of the world. Time is every man's enemy, for it devours all things, and nothing remains afterwards. I despise this world with all my being. That's why I want to change it. Change what has been fated for this world," announced Madara. "I will create a world of peace and love where there is no hatred and no pain." "That sounds wrong," said Naruto. "You will think like that, for now," assured Madara. "However, you could have anything you ever wanted in this dream world. I know how you Jinchuriki are treated. Sorry, former Jinchuriki. They saw you as nothing more than a constant reminder of their pain," explained the Madara. "Let me guess. The villagers, they feared you, hated you, denied you the right to live, the right to love, and they ignored your existence altogether. You were a nobody. Am I correct?" asked the shinobi. "Well, yes," whispered Naruto as his eyes were overshadowed by his hair. "Then those people were stupid. They let their fears rule them, and their hatred blinded them," assured the Onisen Uchiha. "As long as there are things in this world that people don't understand, they will always live in terror. Finished the Madara. But there are people I still care for, shouted Naruto. Like who? My fellow clan member, that killed you. Bit back Madara. Naruto then started having flashbacks of his time with Sasuke. And he was right. Sasuke's hatred had consumed him. It became him, where he would hurt anyone if it meant he would gain power. I see that you understand. Even if you try to leave this place, with your power and your weak body, death will come to you quickly, whispered Madara hoarsely. Naruto relented knowing that he was right. What would happen in this dream world? Questioned Naruto. Anything you ever wanted would become reality. You can create people, manipulate landscapes, even revive the dead, answered Madara where Naruto gasped. He could meet his parents, find out who they were. Madara then channeled chakra to his left eye and whispered Tsukuyami. Naruto and Madara were then transported to a white void. This is what the dream world will initially look like. Then Madara's appearance began to change. He now looked much younger and healthier. This is what will happen. It's a Jinjutsu. However, I cannot create this. I require a stronger power in order to create this Jinjutsu. What would you need? Asked Naruto as he was liking this plan more and more. In order to cast the Jinjutsu, I, or another Mangekyo Sharingan user, must cast the Tsukuyami on the moon, informed Madara. Sounds easy enough, said Naruto, brushing off what Madara said. No, if I could just cast Tsukuyami on the moon, I would have done it already, retorted Madara. The old Uchiha then began to explain the history of the Jubi along with the Rakuto Sennin and his sons. I see we require the power of the Jubi as a catalyst, so we could cast the Tsukuyami on the moon, said Naruto, understanding everything he was told, surprising Madara with his intelligent talk. Exactly. However, in order to revive the Jubi, we need to combine the 9 Biju and seal them within the Geto Mazo, and then one of us would become its Jinchuriki, and we'd cast the Jinjutsu on the world, forcing everyone into the dreamscape. Explained Madara. I have given you my blood, which will allow you to control the Geto Mazo. However, you require the Rinnegan to summon it. Naruto and Madara were now out of the Jinjutsu. Uzumaki, I gave you a second chance, so will you repay me someday? Queried Madara. Naruto's eyes were downcast and his hair was covering his eyes. But he nodded his head. This was the perfect chance for revenge against all those idiotic villagers. So, now is the time to ask, what is your first name? Asked Madara. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, announced the blonde Uzumaki, dropping his psychological mask. Maelstrom, that's a strong name. A good one too. And do you have any regrets? Pressed Madara. I regret not killing Sasuke Uchiha, proclaimed Naruto as he made eye contact with Madara. However, instead of the ocean blue that they were now blood red with 3 tomo surrounding the pupil. However, the pattern changed into a 3-pointed sides surrounding his red pupil. The eyes pattern almost looked like they hungered for death, to take lives almost like a Shinigami. Eyes reflected the person's soul. Those eyes reflected the need to harvest life itself. Very well, from today you are now my student. Naruto, said Madara with a small smile. Today we will commence the Eye of the Moon plan, said Naruto, and bring peace to this world. Heart of Fire. She was crushed. Why? The boy that had apparently loved her was dead. It hadn't been a month since a certain blonde ball of energy passed on. She wasn't the only one suffering. Hinata was too. She had a crush on the idiot, but she never had the courage to tell him. Now she had lost her chance as well. She was so useless. If only she may have been stronger, she could have been there to help Naruto. But no, she was busy fawning over someone that hated her. She was so blind to the obvious truth that the orange-loving kid with the ocean eyes saw her as the center of the world. But now he was gone, and it seemed the village just felt empty, devoid of emotion. A dark gray had cast itself over the village, leaving all the color behind in favor of the dull, lifeless color. The sun seemed to shine less brightly over the buildings and people, and its light was no longer warm and soothing to the touch, and it wasn't cold either, it was just in between. She missed the warmth she would feel every day, but the warmth she received when around him was almost like standing next to a sun. She never got that feeling when around Sasuke, to be precise. All he was, is, and will be, cold like the moon. The sun had lost its warmth and the wind was cold. It now rained more often ever since he died, and it was supposed to be called the Land of Fire, not Land of Sad Rain. Now she knew how Amigakure felt. But why did it rain more often than it ever has? Was the sky weeping and crying over the death of a person whose personality was almost skin to that of the sky, joyous and carefree, freedom unbound? All that space and to do everything you could to the best of their ability, he was like that. Uninhibited by the rules and laws of the world, making only rules for himself and only himself. No one would yell at him. He would get away with everything. Sakura sometimes felt like he was always so lucky to not have parents to yell at you or punish you. But did she really think like that? What if she would spend a week in Naruto's shoes, and maybe she would understand how he would feel? There was a saying that she sometimes heard in the village: you can't truly understand someone until you walk a mile in their shoes. That statement rang true indeed. The village seemed to return to the status quo, but sometimes wounds took a lot longer to heal than others. Everyone had seemed to forgotten the blonde, but Sakura could see that they still had scars. It seemed like they hated the blonde for an as of yet unknown reason that the pinkette couldn't fathom. She always wondered why, but she felt that by discovering the secret would cost her more than it's worth. There was one person she would see every day. Someone that was closer to Naruto than she was, Konohamaru. After the orange-loving boy's death, she would check up on the Surtobi heir to see if he was trying to undo the pain in his heart. But she would be rejected and dejected every time when he would say, "I'm fine, just training." So she just left him on his own so he could cope with loss himself. But the one statement that panged her chest was, "I will continue his legacy." That sentence seemed to spark something within her. It felt like there was an opportunity around the corner, but it was nagging at her mind. What was she supposed to do? The potential to be something great in his eyes. So he could look down and be proud of her and her accomplishments. That was something she wanted more than anything. She had sometimes dreamed of ending herself and going up to join him in the other life. But would that truly solve anything? The blonde spent every waking moment he could to make the village a better place. He gave away his money to orphans, the poor and the downtrodden, obviously understanding how they felt. That was one thing she loved about him, his selflessness. He would do just about anything, just about anybody. He was like that, always helping people, no matter if they were friend or foe. Although he was always loud and exuberant, that was always something that made her giggle. She remembered when her team did the tree climbing exercise. Apparently, she had near-perfect chakra control. Wasn't there something that involved great chakra control? She couldn't remember, but she was sure it would come to her. Tsunade Senju was sitting behind her desk doing what she dreaded most: paperwork, filing missions, approving drinks. Stuff that didn't even matter. How she would give for a certain rambunctious blonde to call her Bachan, despite how she hated that nickname. And yet she let him call her that. Like everyone who knew the sun-kissed blonde, she too was hurting on the inside. It was like a horrid feeling wrenching inside her that refused to leave, like a parasite. She loved the orange lover as if he was her own son. She had finally found a precious person that she could bestow her necklace upon. But its curse had acted again, had taken the boy away from her. She believed the stories that in fact the stories were true, that the cursed necklace would only accept her as a bearer. She should have done more for him, possibly given him better living conditions, or gave him more money so he could live. Apparently, Naruto had gathered up quite a bit of money thanks to all the missions he would do. But she heard that he rarely spent it, and he only brought things he needed. But there were other things he needed, such as friends, family, and love. He spent his money on others' needs that he didn't focus on his own. He had plenty of money, and he rarely met up with his friends, that he never really formed bonds with them, or his friends just thought he was a nuisance and idiot and avoided him like all the others. He could have gotten better clothing than that jumpsuit, she thought. Naruto, whenever he had gotten any money after becoming a shinobi, he gave it away to orphans and the orphanage. But after he died, the orphans stopped getting any funds. Even the matron that run the place came in and told her about it, though when she asked, she always said it was signed as anonymous. That boy, heart of gold indeed. That knucklehead was nothing but a kind of spirit, filled with nothing but everything positive, and he was the purest soul you could meet. She believed that he would earn the acknowledgement of the village someday, but now, today, or any other day. She turned her head to the left and picked up a picture. It was her and the sun-kissed blonde, on the road back to Konoha where she would become Hokage. In the picture she was hugging him, and they were both smiling wildly. He really was like a son to him, but now he was gone. Thanks to the Uchiha, she issued a capture on-site order if her ninja ever saw him. She wouldn't kill him. That's not what he would want. Plus, the civilian council and the elders pulled some strings and passed her judgment because they needed the Sharingan. What a load of bull, she thought angrily. The Sharingan was an asset the counselors believed was vital to the power of Konoha. They also claimed since the Sharingan could control the tailed beasts that they don't even need the Kyuubi. But there has never been an Uchiha that could fully control the power of a Bijuu since Madara Uchiha, so therefore it was unlikely. Tsunade was brought out of her musings when she heard a knock at the door. Wondering who it was since she sent Shizun on an errand that needed to be done, she ushered the person in. To her surprise, it was Sakura Haruno, Naruto's teammate. Now she was confused. What does she want? When Tsunade first laid her brown, honey eyes on the pinkette, the very first thought that came to mind was fangirl. That thought was even furthered when she saw Sakura embrace Sasuke, as if her life depended on it. She also saw the pained expression Naruto had when she hugged Sasuke, that spoiled brat. Tsunade had met and seen many fangirls in her long life, and all were obsessed with their love interests, looks, talent, and coolness, most of which didn't matter, and most times the catcher of their eyes weren't interested in them. So basically they were chasing after mirrors. Sakura was no different. She was probably the biggest fangirl the girl had ever seen. And there wasn't anything special aside for Sasuke other than he was an Uchiha. If he had the Mangekyo Sharingan, then he was worth something. Her thoughts were broken when the pink-haired girl's voice broke the silence like a stick. "Tsunade-sama, I wish to speak with you," she said. The busted blonde-haired woman could tell that she was nervous. For one, their eyes hadn't connected, and two, the girl's body language was screaming guilt. She hadn't really met Sakura aside from seeing her the few times around the village and seeing her with Naruto. But still she would listen to the girl. Tsunade fell into her stalwart Hokage demeanor, where she had a stoic face and judging eyes. "Do you require something, Sakura?" she asked in a way that only a leader can speak with. "Tsunade-sama, I ask of you to take me on as your apprentice," pronounced Sakura. Sakura's heart was beating hard and fast. It took all her courage just to stand in front of the woman. Why did she agree to this? Why did she come before the Hokage, the leader of her village? Her courage was leaking from her like water through a crack. She felt like she was going to shatter at any moment like broken glass. Even walking into her office felt like she was stepping on needles. But she had something to prove, something to make everyone proud of her, to make him proud of her. She wanted to stand tall as a kunoichi, a strong, confident one, which was not at the moment. Tsunade was genuinely surprised. She never expected this question to come from her. But still, why? She understood the request easily, but there must have been an ulterior motive behind it. But why herself? There were plenty of other tutors in Konoha, even Kurenai would be acceptable. But training directly from the Godame Hokage herself, the strongest woman in the world. This was no coincidence, and why did she get the feeling that it was connected to a certain someone? "Shizun," shouted Tsunade in a commanding tone. Her assistant/apprentice came running through the door carrying several stacks of paperwork to which she was sent out for and had just returned, and somehow Tsunade knew she was there. "Yes, Tsunade-sama?" she asked. Whenever her Mazer used this tone of voice, she was always a bit peeved. "Please bring me the file on Sakura Haruno," she ordered, still in her stalwart face. Shizun nodded and quickly left the room for the file. The two kunoichi left in the room were quiet like the grave. Tsunade intertwined her fingers and placed her hands in front of her face. She was studying the girl in front of her. The first thought that came to mind was fangirl, the bane of all true kunoichis. It was because of ninja like this that gave the word kunoichi a bad name, and that's why they were never taken seriously. Not only that her figure was too skinny and there was barely any muscle on her. Was she dieting? The pinkette needed to get rid of that because in battle it would sap her energy and make her a slow, easy target. And if she didn't build muscle, then how was she going to defend herself from enemies? Without a healthy body, the shinobi or kunoichi won't be much use whether or not they have strong ninjutsu and chakra. Sakura was being scrutinized before. Tsunade, she didn't know her thoughts or feelings, but she knew that they weren't good because of the look that she was giving her. She couldn't back down. Now she had something to prove, and if she broke down in front of Tsunade, then nothing will be achieved. Shizune returned to the Hokage's office with the folder in hand and then gave it to her master. Tsunade ordered her to leave, for what was about to transpire must be done privately. Tsunade examined the folder before opening it. On the page there was a picture of Sakura after she had recently become a genin. She scanned every page, every word that was within the file, every little detail. She scanned the folder. Tsunade snapped the folder shut and turned her gaze back on the girl in front of her. "Sakura Haruno, your file says some things that are truly dissatisfactory," were the words that Tsunade used. Sakura was hurt, but she knew it was true. If she denied it, she would only be a fool. It says, doesn't take shinobi skills and training seriously, too obsessed with personal affections that get in the way of teamwork and concentration, spoke Tsunade blankly. It also has reports on your missions and Chunin exam preliminary battle with Ino Yamanaka. In your mission reports mainly your first crank turn to rank. It explains in detail about how over-reliance on teammates when faced with a superior adversary clouded judgment and stayed behind the scenes without participating once in team action to save their sensei, who was trapped. Then there's the report on your prelim match with Ino Yamanaka. Chosen words are pathetic, by Karina Yui. Barely has mastery of the basic academy jutsu and showed no other skills other than below-average taijutsu, says Asuma Sarutobi, and disgrace to all kunoichi, says Anko Mitarashi, and who let her in the academy, says Ibiki Marino. Sakura's confidence was breaking fast. Everything she said was right, and she can't dispute that. But this is not important, spoke Tsunade as she finished reciting the report. Why do you wish to become my apprentice, Sakura? That was the question Tsunade wanted to know the most. Because I wish to be a strong kunoichi and serve the Leaf Village and become an admirable medic nin, spoke Sakura with false confidence. No, was what Sakura heard. She looked up and saw Tsunade looking at her sympathetically. Sakura, tell me the truth, why do you want to become my apprentice? Queried Tsunade. Sakura gasped at the answer. The Hokage knew she was lying, but she just wants to know the real reason why. I want to become stronger. I want to learn medical ninjutsu, so I can save people. People die, I know that, but doesn't mean we can't give them the chance to live. I don't want people like Naruto to die. She started freely sobbing. I want to become strong to make him proud of me. I want my life to have a purpose. I don't want Naruto's death to be for nothing. I want his will to carry on through me and all the others. So please take me on as your apprentice, pleaded the pink-haired genin. Tsunade expected that answer, but still seeing Sakura break down in before her was almost a mirror image of the time Dan and Nawaki were killed during the Second Shinobi World War. Those two were her life, and when she lost them, a piece of herself followed after. Very well, Sakura Haruno. You are now my apprentice. We will start tomorrow, but don't expect me to go easy on you. My training will be hard and rigorous, spoke Tsunade seriously. Sakura steeled herself and faced her new teacher. Yes, Tsunade-sensei, I won't fail you. And with that said, a new promise was made to a blonde-haired boy. Somewhere dark and cold was an old man sitting on a wooden throne, a kusarigama in hand that substituted as his cane. This man was Madara Uchiha, and he was watching his only student Naruto Uzumaki going through physical torture. Technically, it was a physical workout. It was a week ago when Naruto's rehabilitation finished and his muscles and internal organs started working properly. The first thing he started on was Naruto's physical muscle. When Naruto first started, he had a lot of baby fat and not much muscle, which was something that needed rectified and quickly. Madara knew that the blonde needed to be in peak fighting condition where he one day shatter stone with one of his punches. So he forced Naruto into his training by doing 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 squats, and 2 hours of non-stop running. To Naruto, Madara was a slave driver, but the blonde never complained. After Naruto had woken up, Zetsu brought him some new clothes after his old ones were destroyed by his new sensei. His new attire consisted of a leather vest, umbu-style pants, fingerless leather gloves, and a pair of black ninja sandals. When questioned how Zetsu got them, it didn't answer, but the white half did. It explained that the big flower was growing even more white Zetsus, and that the artificial humans can turn into other people, and they bought the clothes with fake money. So that was how Zetsu got the clothes. No more questions were asked. Surprisingly, Madara had a quaint knowledge of Fuinjutsu. He immediately created gravity seals designed for Naruto to increase his speed, strength, and physical mass. And it was a great plan. Already Madara was able to see the results of the torture training he had Naruto undergo. There was the faint buildup of muscle where the body parts that Naruto targeted someday that muscles would become hard as wood. Over the week, Madara had gotten to know the hyperactive blonde, and he was intriguing. Even after dropping the psychological mask, Naruto still held on to some of his tendencies. He had a peculiar obsession for ramen, calling it the food of the gods. He still liked the color orange despite the verbal beating he got from Madara saying that orange was a stupid and useless color, to which the two argued for hours on end saying whether or not orange was or was not a stupid color, but Naruto sported a small smile afterwards. But now Naruto was a quiet and reserved individual. He never complained, well, not to Madara anyway, and he smiled less. And it seemed like Naruto was really bitter towards the people of Konoha, which was what the old Uchiha wanted. A great change to Naruto now was that he was a perfectionist that didn't stop until he fully mastered what he was learning, which reminded Madara of himself. But the most amazing thing about his student was that he had untapped potential lying within him, as if a great flood was being held back by a wall made of sticks. You didn't need the Sharingan to see it. Even without the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, it was there. He was pleased that Zetsu brought him the boy. He now had a powerful weapon to carry on his legacy and will and complete what he had been planning for years. But one thing he did take offense to was the quality of the shinobi of the current age, where the elites were unable to capture a blonde-haired boy wearing a bright orange jumpsuit in the middle of the day. But now he was pondering whether or not to start teaching Naruto elemental manipulation. But to do that, he would need to discover Naruto's chakra nature. For if he was going to use the boy, he was going to make him as strong as possible, because he was now unable to do much. In a way, Naruto reminded Madara of his younger brother Izuna. In more ways than one. They shared the same determination and quiet nature, and were similar when it came to fighting, focused, and quick thinking. But one thing about the blonde that surprised Madara was Naruto's deceptive nature. The boy was cunning and tricky. Madara likened him to a fox, ironic considering he was a container for massive orange fox with 9 tails. Maybe that's where he got his love for orange. But this talent would certainly be a boon in the future. Madara never knew what Naruto was scheming. It was well hidden by a wall of words, but Madara had a feeling that Naruto was planning something. And speaking of the fox, it seemed that Naruto was able to retain his incredible healing ability. Now he could use the Shadow Clone Jutsu to full effect without any negative drawbacks. The future, thought Madara. The ancient Uchiha knew he didn't have much time left, even while connected to the statue that was keeping him alive. He had about 3.5 years left before the statue stopped, giving him chakra to sustain himself. But there was one thing on Madara's mind that gave him pause. The Kyuubi attack. The beast was sealed in the boy by the Yondaime Hokage, but why would the fox just randomly attack the village when it had the chance to escape and be free? By attacking the village, it had another chance to be sealed again. Unless someone was controlling it, couldn't have been his enemy, Hashirama, because he was dead and Zetsu told him he was sealed. So who could it have been? Another Uchiha? Zetsu, yelled Madara hoarsely. In a few minutes, he could see the Venus flytrap that opened up to expose his head. Yes, asked the black half. Why did Madara call for him the last time he visited? Was when he gave Naruto his new clothes. Find out everything you can about the Kyuubi attack 13 years ago, and see what could have caused it, and who was controlling it, commanded Madara. The white half was confused. Why would he care about the Kyuubi attack? But the black half understood fully. I'll check it out, said the black half. He was about to sink in. He ground before the white counterpart spoke up. Oh, and hey, race the papers you wanted, spoke the white cheerfully. It handed Madara the papers and sunk into the ground. Madara examined the papers. Yep, perfect. Naruto, called Madara. Naruto stopped on his 924th push-up and just stared at his sensei curiously. Madara called him over and began to explain chakra natures and affinities. Naruto, you see this in my hand, said Madara. Naruto just stared at the papers. What was so special about them? They were just papers. Pieces of paper, he answered blankly. That was another thing about him that was new after dropping the mask. Naruto was now devoid of emotion, or he just never revealed his emotions, but Madara believed it was the latter. Yes and no. These are chakra papers. spoke Madara, but Naruto didn't seem like he was following on with the same thought. These papers are grown from a tree that is infused and grown from chakra. They are able to tell you what affinity you have to one of the basic elements: fire, water, wind, earth, and lightning. Each one has their own strengths and weaknesses and other special relationships with one another. Naruto just nodded now, knowing that they were quite interesting papers. Now, I have little doubt that you have a fire affinity in part to my blood that's running through you, spoke Madara. Wait, sensei, asked Naruto. Now he had the old man's attention. How do you tell what chakra nature you have with these papers? Madara was getting around to that. He handed Naruto one of the papers and held onto to another. Like this, said Madara. He channeled a small amount of chakra into the paper. What happened first was half of it ignited and turned to ash, and while the second half split in two. You see, Naruto, this paper is sensitive to chakra, and when you channel even the smallest amount, something will occur. Now tell me what happened to my paper? Naruto just recalled what he just saw. First half of your paper ignited and turned to ash, then after that the second half split in two. Exactly, which means I have two affinities: fire and wind. Naruto just nodded. At least he had a teacher that was skilled in fire jutsu. Now to find out your affinity, 5 things will happen to your paper. If your affinity is fire like mine, your paper will burn. Wind, also like mine, will cut in half. Water, it will become wet. Earth will crumble into dust, while lightning, it will wrinkle, explained Madara. But my main affinity is fire since it was the first to appear. Naruto nodded and looked at his paper. He channeled his chakra into it, and 3 things happened. First, the paper split in two. The 2 halves that were left, one burned and turned into ash while the other wrinkled up. Madara stared at the paper. 3 chakra natures. That was rare, and they all appeared to be natural too. It seems you have 3 affinities, Naruto: wind, fire, and lightning, praised Madara. Cool. So when do we get started on elemental manipulation? Asked Naruto. He was really tired of doing all these exercises. You don't, said Madara. What? Spat Naruto. Why was he even doing all those punishing exercises? But I have the Sharingan, I can just predict my enemy's attacks, stated Naruto. He didn't notice the wrinkly hand coming at him, aimed for his head. A loud slap was heard as Madara's hand came into contact with the back of Naruto's head. Don't question your master, bellowed Madara. The blonde was lying on the floor, clutching the back of his head. This was the first time Naruto was being rebellious in front of Madara, and then he said something stupid. I just did, you old goat. Several tick marks appeared on Madara's face. He didn't mind being called old, but an old goat was something he didn't stand. He gripped his Kusarigama and started whacking Naruto with it multiple times on its blunt end while Naruto was repeating, "Ow, ow, I'm sorry, ow, ow." Around about this time, Zetsu retuned and was treated with a rather amusing sight. Madara was hitting Naruto with the blunt side of his Kusarigama. Although the hits didn't really hurt Naruto, he just wanted to stop being hit by an old man. It was breaking his reputation. The 2 halves chuckled at the scene, since it was rare when Madara would become so active. After a few minutes of discipline by Madara, the old Uchiha sat back down in his throne-like chair. Naruto, there is a limitation to the Sharingan, said Madara, gaining the blonde's attention. Even though we can see all our opponent's movements, doesn't mean we can intercept them all the time. You must train your body to be able to overcome every threat, and the Sharingan will be your tool to further overwhelm your opponent. Because even if you can track their movements, your own body will not be able to keep up with your opponents, explained Madara. That's why I gave you weight seals, to increase the amount of speed and strength within you attacks, while your other exercises are to increase you stamina. Now Naruto understood. If he only explained that to him in the beginning. You could have just said at the beginning, mumbled Naruto. I wanted you to figure it out, said Madara. But Naruto was surprised by that statement. I want you to be able to figure these things out yourself, for if you are going to deploy the Eye of the Moon plan, then you will face powerful opponents like the Kages, clarified Madara. Now get back to your training, or do you want me to hit you again? Said Madara with an evil glint in his eye. Naruto nodded and went back to training. Madara faced Zetsu. That didn't take long, commented the former Uchiha leader. Zetsu just stared impassively at its creator. That's because of what I found was quite interesting. And what did you find? Asked Madara, raising his gray eyebrow at his subordinate. A note from the Yondaime Hokage to the Sandaime, saying a person claiming to be Madara Uchiha took control of the Kyuubi and attacked the village. The village has become quite lazy if it can be infiltrated so easily. But back to the Kyuubi attacker, spoke Zetsu. Impossible. I was sitting right here 13 years ago, and even then my body was not like it was. I couldn't be able to extract the Kyuubi and attack the Konohagakure with the blade I have now, growled Madara. Some Uchiha is impersonating me. A copycat. We need to find this person and kill him. He could be a threat to me and my plans. He could ruin everything. And I did just that, declared Zetsu. Somehow Zetsu always seemed to please him more and more. Whoever had attacked the village has been manipulating the Akatsuki through the guise of Madara Uchiha. Although I couldn't place a name, I have found out that he has ensnared Nagato and has ordered him to collect the Biju to seal in the statue. Madara was in thought at what Zetsu said. Someone was influencing Nagato to carry out the exact same plan he thought of. This person must have been a really good copycat, or he just took pleasure in using a name that he couldn't measure up to. But he was influencing the only other person who could summon the decrepit statue, Madara's pawn. When the time is right, I will have Naruto deal with the impersonator because I cannot anymore. Although I would love nothing more than to deploy the infinite Tsukuyomi. This person is controlling my pawns, and if it's one thing I hate, is people who meddle in others' affairs. The Eye of the Moon plan was my idea. Only I or my heir Naruto will deploy it. No one else. This Madara aspirer must be eliminated, connived Madara darkly. It's been 2 months since that time when Madara was told about the Kyuubi attack's instigator. He then told Naruto about hoping to have him become even more loyal to him, and it worked like a charm. Naruto became even more devoted and loyal to Madara, saying that he will kill the fake Madara that caused his life to become hell. For he was the epicenter for all the hatred and loneliness Naruto suffered in his life. It was all because of him. But he would soon have the power to kill him with mutual hatred. But there was one thing missing. The fake Madara was responsible for the attack against the village. He may have even had a hand in the Uchiha massacre. Thought Naruto was he was resting from his physical training. It was because of him that the village hates me, but also the Yondaime Hokage had a part to play in that. But the fake Madara may have killed my parents. Zetsu, yelled Naruto. If there was anyone that could find out who his parents were, it was the plant man. Zetsu rose up from the ground. Only his upper body was visible. Yes, Naruto? Asked Zetsu. This was the first time the blonde asked for something from the colored man. I want you to run a DNA test at the Konoha hospital by infiltrating the village to find out who my parents were, spoke Naruto rather quickly. Zetsu was surprised. He never expected something like that. Okay, but first, I will need some of your blood so I can compare it to anyone in the Leaf Village, stated Zetsu. An hour later, they began a blood extraction. They watched as the red liquid filled up the small container ready for the test to happen at the hospital. I will be back in a few hours, said the plant thing. It was night in Konoha, and all was quiet. Not a single soul was stirring, not even in the hospital. Zetsu morphed from the ground, in the middle of the reception area. Black Zetsu being a powerful sensor, so he could sense the signatures of everyone in the hospital, and it felt nothing in the hospital except for its patients. Do you know Naruto hates hospitals? Stated the white version to the black one. Yes, it simply said. Oh, come on, I wanted to surprise you. They made their way to a certain wing in the hospital where they found many things, including operating machines used for scanning DNA, and among other things. Ooh, this is the place, right? Asked the white. No shit. They took out the necessary hospital equipment needed for the procedure. Zetsu didn't have fingerprints, so it wouldn't leave behind any. Zetsu typed away on the keyboard that operated the computer. It then compared the DNA results between Naruto and his parents, hoping to find any inkling on who they were. The first picture that came up on the screen was a beautiful red-headed woman with violet eyes and a round face. Ooh, she's pretty, said white Zetsu. This is Naruto's mother. Her name is Kushina Uzumaki, birthday, July 10th, blood type, B, Jonin, status, deceased. Stated Black Zetsu. Oh, poor Naruto. Time for the father, quick, quick, said white Zetsu with glee. The second picture that appeared was a handsome, spiky blonde-haired man with blue eyes. White Zetsu was shocked. The Yondaime Hokage was Naruto's father. Now it made sense to the artificial human. Of course Yondaime would seal the QB within his son. How come they didn't see it before? Minato Namikaze, birthday, January 25th, blood type, B, Kage, status, deceased. Spoke Black Zetsu. Now this is a surprising turn of events. Who should we tell first, Naruto or Madara? Let's tell them both. Spoke Black Zetsu. Who can't wait for Naruto's reaction? Said White Zetsu. The flytrap man morphed into the ground not before ridding any evidence that it was there, but… Wait, said White Zetsu. There's more. Zetsu eyed this new information that appeared on the computer screen. It was tracing other relatives, but since Naruto's parents didn't have any siblings, it instantly went through grandparents and great-grandparents. What do we have here? Stated the black half. The sun was shining brightly over the Kanahagakure. The birds were singing, the rivers were flowing, the leaves were dancing in the wind, and two freaks wearing green jumpsuits were shouting about the power of youth. It was one of the now rare few times the sun actually shined, but it still lacked the warmth that came with it. Sakura Haruno was on her way to the Yamanaka flower ship. The village seemed happy, happier than it has ever been. But Sakura, she was just normal. In fact, she wasn't even overjoyed that she was apprenticed to Tsunade. She didn't know why, but hopefully she may find the answer to the question, in time of course. The flower shop was now in sight, and she could see her best friend Ino Yamanaka behind the checkout examining her nails for the 17th time that day. Sakura sighed at the image. Some people never change. Ino used to do that when they were younger, all the time. She opened the Yamanaka flower shop door and heard a ring of the doorbell. Ino was broken out of her stupor when her best friend walked in. Hey Sakura, greeted the platinum blonde. Hey Ino, greeted Sakura back. So I heard the news, said Ino, trying to start up a conversation with the pinkette. What news? Asked Sakura. Oh, you know, there's been word that a certain pink-haired genin became the apprentice to the Godame Hokage, Tsunade Senju, spoke Ino in an informative tone. But those have to be rumors, since they never said anything about your massive forehead in it. What you say, Inapik? Screeched Sakura, flames of feminine fury flickering off her form. You heard what I said, billboard brow, said Ino, grinding her teeth together. Their noses were inches apart, and they looked like they were about to tear each other a new one, until Kiba walked through the door. Hey Sakura, hey Ino, said Kiba with a happy grin on his face, totally unaware of the raging behemoths in front of him. Get the fuck out, Kiba. They both yelled at the same time as they threw bouquets of flowers at him, which somehow against the laws of physics propelled him out onto the street, a trail of blood flying of his lip, and his eyes were wide and white. Kiba felt like a mountain had just hit him while being kicked in the gut by a donkey. Today just wasn't his day. At the same time, Shikamaru walked around the corner and saw Kiba unconscious on the ground, sporting a large bump on his head and a trail of blood at the corner of his lip, and possibly some cracked ribs. When Shikamaru looked to his right, he saw Ino and Sakura arguing, more like screaming like raging banshees and calling each other names. Troublesome, muttered Shikamaru as he stepped over Kiba and continued on his path. Whoever had the thought that women were sensitive creatures by nature must have been stupid at the time. I mean, seriously, this is why I don't get my mom mad. She's dangerous enough as it is. But back to Sakura and Ino. You are so lucky, Sakura, I mean being apprenticed to the Tsunade of the Sannin. Do you know how many women would kill or maim for that position? Commented Ino. I know, but I'm not doing this for myself or anybody else, pronounced Sakura. Ino was taken back at what Sakura said. Then why is she doing it? But if not for anybody or yourself, then why? Inquired Ino. Sakura looked down at the ground. Ino got the message that it was incredibly painful to talk about and taboo around her. I'm doing it because of a promise I made, said Sakura sadly. Deciding to drop the topic, for now Ino instead asked a different question involving her best friend. Okay Sakura, what kind of flowers would you like today? Can I get some white roses? Please Ino, asked Sakura in a sincere voice. White roses, great. The symbol of passion, remembrance, happiness, and love. You chose well, forehead, said Ino as she tied a bouquet of white roses together. So who's the lucky guy that's got your eye? Asked Ino, knowing this would be good gossip. They're for Naruto, said Sakura quietly. Ino gasped a little loudly. She knew she had just treaded on unwanted ground. And with that, Sakura left the shop with Ino watching her retreating form. Ino was in the same boat as Sakura. Even though she wasn't close with Naruto, she still regretted all the times she'd make fun of him and punch him. If only she could take them back and tell him how sorry she was. She felt guilty over the fact that she was a bully towards him and her mother encouraged her to bully him, while her father disapproved of it, knowing something she didn't. The walk to the cemetery was quiet and quick. Sakura was on autopilot, her mind preoccupied with everything she wanted to do with her former blonde teammate, but now that would never happen. When she reached the cemetery, she walked over to the Naruto's headstone, but she wasn't the only one that was there. Hinata was standing there as well. Everyone in their academy days could see that Hinata liked Naruto, and somehow Naruto was so dense that he never noticed. Sakura walked up to the tombstone and laid the white roses in front of it. Hinata didn't seem to acknowledge her presence. When Hinata had heard that Naruto died, she didn't cry, she didn't vent her frustrations, she didn't blame anyone, she just became detached from everyone. A few minutes of silence. Hinata left the cemetery, maybe to give Sakura some alone time, or just because she wanted to. Deciding that now that they were perfectly alone, Sakura said what was on her mind. "Hey Naruto-kun," she started off. "I came to visit again, and I brought flowers." Ino says hello. She smiled, thinking of the memories she had with the blonde. "I went to Tsunadesima today, and I asked if she could take me one as her student, and she said yes. I'm going to mainly be training in medical ninjutsu, and possibly Tsunadesima's incredible strength. I want you to know that. I'll visit once every week if I can so we can just talk, you know." She giggled for a second. "I really miss you. I miss your smile, that atrocious jumpsuit you always wore. I miss your competitive rivalry with Sasuke. I miss that loud voice of yours." She smiled as she lifted off some of the qualities Naruto had. "Just so you know, I'm sorry how I treated you. I never really bothered to get to know you, though now I wish I had." She was looking for more words to say, but she was running out of words to say. "I'll come by again next week, okay? Bye, Naruto," she said. She turned and left the cemetery slowly, but not before sparing a glance at the headstone with a melancholic look. But she didn't notice Kakashi standing a bit away. He watched everything, and now he had even more regrets. He felt like it was because of him that Naruto won't be living life with someone that loved him. He also possibly stopped a future life ever growing in the future. And if he could rank his regrets, Naruto's death was one of Kakashi's greatest. He walked up to the headstone and just stared at it impassively, no thoughts running through his head. He was standing there for hours on end, unflinching and silent, not even thinking except for the memories of his time with his sensei's son. Believing he had spent enough time at the cemetery, he walked away saying a silent prayer for his student, until he was shaken from his thoughts by a loud voice. "Kakashi, my eternal rival, today we must bathe in the springtime of your youth," roared an enthusiastic voice. It seems he was going to do another of Guy's challenges today. His shoulders slumped in depression. He was going to be hounded by Guy until he did one of his challenges again. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk doing the bane of all Kage's paperwork. She opened her drawer and took out a bottle of sake that she got for herself. Even though she would get a tongue lashing from Shizune for drinking on the job, it didn't matter since she wanted alcohol, and it was her favorite pastime. Besides, she could handle Shizune and her wicked tongue anytime. She took a swig of the alcohol and bent back in her chair, enjoying the position and the taste of the liquid in her mouth. There was nothing that could break the peace and quiet she was having now. Everyone's emotional wounds seemed to have healed after her favorite blonde's passing, but there was still some that were bleeding. She took another swig when suddenly one of her NBU agents appeared kneeling in front of her, causing her to spit out her drink. "Hokage-sama, there was a breach in security of the village less than 24 hours ago," informed the ANBU. "What?" she yelled, and she regained her composure shortly after that. "How did this happen?" she demanded. "Less than half an hour ago, a Chunin stationed at the hospital searched over the video recordings last night, and he found the intruder on the video strolling through the hospital. This person was wearing a black cloak, emblazoned with red clouds," continued the ANBU agent. Akatsuki, but what would they want with the hospital, she thought. Bird, was there anything else that the camera feeds picked up? The ENBU agent, now identified as Bird, nodded. After the Chunin reported the disturbance to the ANBU, a team was sent over to study what was found, but what we found should only be for your eyes only, Hokage-sama. said Bird. Tsunade thought over what she would need to do. Get me Shizune, Shikaku, Kakashi, and Jiraiya, knowing the pervert he could be at the hot springs, ordered Tsunade. At once, said Bird as he disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves. Tsunade got up behind her desk and started walking to the hospital. When she arrived, there was already a team of ANBU members waiting for her. They bowed in respect and took her to the security room where all the tapes at the hospital were made. When she entered the room, Shizune was already waiting for her, with her master's pet pig Taunton in her arms along with Shikaka Nara, who gave her a nod. Though she expected Kakashi to be late, but Jiraiya wasn't here until the door opened behind her and trotted in Jiraiya with a serious expression carved into his visage. Okay, what was so important that it had to interrupt my research? Asked Jiraiya, a little peeved at the situation. Tsunade gained a tick mark on her forehead at the pervert's words. Even after Naruto's death, he was still focused on writing those perverted trash. The village had been infiltrated during the night. We're soon going to look at the footage, but I want Kakashi here for this, said Tsunade as her annoyance over the toad, Sannin, faded. Jiraiya, Shizune, and Shikaku were surprised and worried. Konohagakure was one of the most difficult places to sneak into. It was just as hard to get into like Amigakure and their security. You needed to be a master of stealth just to get past the sensory barrier that surrounded Konoha, but to freely walk in with a black cloak with red clouds on it without drawing attention to yourself was near impossible. When Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki entered the village looking for Naruto, that was different. Itachi was a former Konoha ANBU captain, so of course he knew of the village's defenses and the way to get around them, and Kisame had assassinated other countries' daimyos and gotten away, so he at least was an expert at stealth. An hour passed, and yet Kakashi had yet to arrive. Tsunade gained a tick mark at his tardiness. Another hour passed, and Tsunade had gotten another tick mark at Kakashi being 2 hours late. By the time of the third hour had passed, Tsunade now had 3 tick marks on her face, which was throbbing wildly, and boy was she pissed. The door opened to reveal Kakashi reading that stupid orange smut he read. He greeted the 3 others in the room with a casual yo and a smile, but instead of a hello back, he got a punch in the face by Tsunade. Lucky for him, it wasn't chakra-infused. Kakashi got up off the floor and dusted himself off, but was still surprised that Tsunade just attacked high out of the blue. Now that we are all here, let's get Kakashi up to speed, said Jiraiya, trying to defuse the situation since things have been tense between the two Sannin and Kakashi. Jiraiya cleared his throat and spoke to Kakashi, since it was better if he did it and not Tsunade. Over the night, the Leaf Village was infiltrated by an unknown assailant. Who they are and how they got in still remains a mystery, as they penetrated through the sensory barrier with relative ease. However, they weren't really careful when they arrived here at the hospital, where we caught them on the building's video surveillance, but what we do know is that the assailant was wearing a black cloak with red clouds. They now had Kakashi's full attention. If it was anything concerning the Akatsuki, it wasn't good. Shizune tapped a few buttons on the keyboard, activated the monitor, and selected the recorded tape. When the image came to life, the first thing they saw was the reception area. Then what looked like a Venus flytrap-like thing started morphing from the ground, and then became a full body, and as clear as day, they could see the black cloak with the red clouds. The Chunin was right, it is the Akatsuki, said Shizune, and Taunton oinked worriedly. But what could the Akatsuki want with this hospital? There's nothing special about it, spoke Shizune, getting an oink of agreement from Taunton. But they already accessed the village when they were looking for Naruto. But those were Itachi and that other ninja Kisame. Why would another Akatsuki agent come here again? And there's something not right here, stated Shikaku. All eyes were on him, even the pigs. From what the information tells us that Jurizuma was able to conjure up is that the Akatsuki work in pairs. So where's his partner? Said Shikaku as he gestured toward Zetsu on the screen. This is starting to get more confusing by the second. None of this information gives us something to go on. But Shizune's right. Why the hospital? Said Tsunade as she rubbed her temple. Maybe it's not the hospital that interests them, spoke Kakashi, getting everyone's attention. He was about to speak again before a new voice made itself known. Maybe it has nothing to do with the hospital at all, or whatever they need to do is within the building. Everyone in the room turned their attention toward the door when after a second scowls started sprouting. Before the doorway was an old man with black spiky hair, covered in bandages mainly in areas such as his right eye and right arm leaning on a cane. Danzo, growled Jiraiya. The darkness of the shinobi was standing before everyone, his impassive face unreadable. Along with him were the Hokage's two other advisors, Hamura Kato and Koharu Udatane. "What are you doing here?" asked Shikaku. Anyone could see that his body was tense, but it was always tense around Danzo. "We received a message that the village had been infiltrated by an agent of the Akatsuki," stated Hamura. "Is this true, Tsunade?" asked Koharu. "Yes," answered Tsunade, her unease and annoyance just rippling off her. "Then you have also yet made another lapse of judgment on the security of Konoha," spoke Danzo. The scowls just got a whole lot bigger. "First, the Sharingan abandons the village, and not a day after we lose our weapon, the Jinchuriki, and now a wanted group of missing ninja are now able to waltz freely from within and out our village. Those circumstances were not her fault," defended Shikaku. "It was the Uchiha's own choice to leave the village, and it was his choice to kill Naruto, and we have no idea about the capabilities of the rest of the Akatsuki." Danzo didn't seem fazed, but he knew this was not a battle he could win at the moment. All the 7 people in the room turned their attention back to the screen where the plant thing opened up to reveal a man, one half completely black and the other white with green hair. "Peculiar," said Hamura. This person's appearance was strange to say the least. But being half-colored was not the weirdest to Hamura, it was the fly-trap-like appendage. They watched as the black and white man walked through the hospital to a certain wing. When he arrived, Shizune and Tsunade instantly recognized it as the room where all the blood tests and all other things concerning blood is performed. Then the plant thing took out a small vial of red liquid and scanned its contents into the monitor. And what appeared next made everyone freeze. It was a picture of Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot, blooded habanero. They were unable to hear anything the person was saying because the video doesn't record sound. They paused the monitor again and decided to have a chat. "Why would the Akatsuki be interested in Kushina? She's dead," inquired Jiraiya. "Maybe it had to be the fact that she was the former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi," answered Shikaku. Shikaku was later given knowledge of this as the village's head jonin, and Tsunade also knew, of course, being the Hokage, and she also informed Jiraiya and Shizune. "No, it's something else, but what?" said Tsunade as she bit her finger. They continued to play the tape, where they saw something else that shocked them. An image of Minato Namikaze appeared on the screen. "Okay, that's it, I give up. What do the Akatsuki want with dead people?" yelled Tsunade. The pieces of the puzzle were not fitting together. None of this made any sense. Tsunade studied the image of her predecessor and Jiraiya's former student. It was amazing how no one figured out that Naruto was Minato's son. I mean, come on, the kid was a younger clone of the man. "That's it, Naruto." "Jiraiya, Kakashi, do you think this has some connection to Naruto?" asked Tsunade. "No, nothing comes to mind. Naruto is dead. I don't see why the Akatsuki are interested with him now since the Kyuubi's chakra has dispersed," responded Kakashi. "Same here, Haim. But I don't see why the Akatsuki would care about Naruto's parentage. They wouldn't care if he was Kami's kid. This doesn't make any sense," said Jiraiya as he rubbed his hand through his hair. They watched the rest of the recording, and they were back to square one. In fact, watching the video, it just made things even more confusing. Questions needed to be answered, but the only people who had the answers were the Akatsuki. With confusing thoughts in their minds, all the occupants in the room left, except Jiraiya, who kept staring at the monitor in front of him. Why Minato and Kushina? What do they have to do with anything the Akatsuki planned? At Myobokuzen, the great Toad Sage was pondering whether to tell Jiraiya that Naruto is still alive. He had argued with himself for hours whether or not to tell him. But in his prophecy, he said that either a greatest savior or destroyer would come about in the world, but it was not his place to decide such things. In the end, he decided to withhold the information from Jiraiya until it was truly necessary. He would just observing all creation, watching as nature takes its course. But he would tell Jiraiya of the new news he had received, something which would ultimately decide the course the world will take. "Hey, you old geezer, wake up," yelled Shima, a Toad Sage of Myokuzen. "Ma, you shouldn't call the Honorable Sage such a disrespectful title," berated Fukasaku, another sage of the Maze Mountain. "Shut up, you old fart. We've been sitting here for hours, and now dinner is all cold. It's not easy being a housewife, you know, yelled Shima. Stop calling me an old fart, you dusty bag. And who cares about dinner? Bit back Fukasaku. I care, since I'm the one doing the cooking. Both old toads started arguing, gaining the honorable sage's attention. Now spouses shouldn't fight, said the elder. The two small toads looked back at the elder, waiting for what he was going to say. Please summon Jiraiya here as soon as you can. There is something I must tell him. The two toads were astonished. The old toad wanted to speak to Jiraiya again. Fukasaku then did the appropriate hand signs for a reverse summoning. Gyaku Kuchios no Jutsu, yelled Fukasaku as he slammed his hand down on the ground, where multiple symbols appeared on the ground. Smoke appeared, and it revealed the form of Jiraiya. The Sannin was flabbergasted. He never expected to be back at Myobokuzen. Fukasaku-sama, asked Jiraiya. Jiraiyakin, the great lord elder, wishes to speak with you, said Fukasaku. Jiraiya turned and faced the great elder. Will you hurry up? I wanted to have dinner, shouted Shima. Her annoyance was very well known at this point. Now that we are here, who are you again? Said the elder. Everyone seemed to deflate at this. Jiraiya, yelled Shima. She wanted to get this over with and go and make dinner. Ah yes, Jiraiya, I have summoned you here because I have had another vision, another prophecy, said the sage. What was in your vision? Asked Jiraiya. If another vision had been made, it was either good or bad. In my dream, I saw a great beast, a foul creature. It created countries, swallowed oceans, split the land, carried mountains, and with its breath spawned hurricanes, and its mere presence alone will immerse the world in terror. And yet this creature is a part of nature, and nature is a part of it, spoke the sage. Jiraiya was scared. This beast didn't sound all that nice to him. This beast will come to our world soon, and with it probably our destruction. It is the harbinger of the end days. When you hear its howl, you will know that it has come, spoke the elder sage. This seemed to depress everyone else in the room. That was not a good way to start a prophecy. However, there was someone else in my dream, continued the elder sage. Who? Asked Jiraiya carefully. He needed to find this person and possibly save the world. I cannot say. This being was clouded from me, answered the sage. But this person was forged from darkness and fire, bears the scars of the winds of war, and the tides of sorrow hammer against him. He carries the hatred of 1,000 men and the love of none. He holds up the pillars of the earth, and his power sparks hope and fear in the world. He will rise and subjugate the beast. Jiraiya gained some relief of who the sage described. But that one word seemed to awaken something in Jiraiya. When he does enslave the beast, he will either bring salvation or despair, depending on which path he takes, spoke the sage. It opened its eyes and examined Jiraiya. To unearth this person, you must stare into the eyes of the abyss and shadows, and it will find you. Is that it? Asked Jiraiya. Yes, that is it, spoke the sage. But Jiraiya, this person may be an even greater threat than the beast. With those words, Jiraiya was sent back to where he was summoned. Jiraiya found himself in the Hokage's office. His sudden reappearance startled Tsunade. Jiraiya, what happened? Where did you go? Shouted Tsunade. Jiraiya cowered under the glare. He then started to tell her everything the sage told him about the great beast and the person of fire. A great beast that swallows oceans, and a man that bears the scars of the winds of war. Tsunade was baffled. Jiraiya, do you think this beast is the Kyuubi? Asked Tsunade. No, I don't think so, Haim. I believe that this beast is even a greater threat than the Kyuubi, answered Jiraiya. And what of this mysterious person, the one with eyes like the abyss? Said Tsunade. I don't know, Haim, this is all that I was given. I'm just as perplexed as you are, said Jiraiya. But there was something that the elder warned me about, said Jiraiya, gaining Tsunade's attention. He said that this person may be an even greater threat than the beast, spoke Jiraiya with a grim voice. They both sat in the room while silence reigned over them. At dark, the dark hovel with Madara and Naruto. Madara was having a nap, since he's old. Naruto was resting, sleeping soundly, until Madara got up and whacked him over his head with the blunt side of his Kuzurigama. Ow! What was that for? Yelled/asked Naruto. We are now going to begin the first part of your true training. Naruto, we are going to begin elemental manipulation, explained Madara. This got Naruto excited because he was fed up with all the physical exercises. I believe that your physical body had adjusted well to all the exercises. Naruto got up and took off his black vest, and he was right. Naruto was now well built. He wasn't overly muscular, and yet he wasn't skinny as a twig, and he was lean and fit, a perfect combination. Then Madara finally took notice of the necklace around Naruto's neck. It had a green crystal in the middle with two accessories on either side. Madara had seen that necklace before. Naruto, said Madara. Naruto turned to his sensei after putting his black vest back on. Where did you get that necklace? Asked Madara. Naruto looked down and saw the necklace hanging by his neck. I won it in a bet, from the old woman who hides behind a genjutsu to make herself look young, answered Naruto. Tell me, I wish to know, did that necklace belong to the first Hokage? Inquired Madara. Yeah, it did, answered Naruto confusedly. Madara didn't respond, but he was thinking of something that could work. Doesn't matter. Naruto, since we have discovered that you have 3 chakra natures, all of which are natural, we're going to start with the one I am most familiar with. Fire release. The ancient Uchiha tapped his cane/scythe, and out came some random white zetsu. The white zetsu kneeled in front of Madara like a loyal dog that obeyed any order. The old Uchiha lifted his Kusarigama and channeled chakra into it, and decapitated the head of the white zetsu, and then it turned into a tree. These zetsus are basically clones made of the first Hokage's DNA. I channeled my yang chakra through my scythe, and used the Hien no Jutsu, flying swallow jutsu, simultaneously. That's why this dead zetsu turned into a tree when it came in contact with my yang chakra. I don't understand, said Naruto, but Madara expected this. I will explain. There are 2 types of chakra in this world that people can utilize. Yin chakra and yang chakra, said Madara. Yin chakra is making imagination into reality and is the spiritual energy that is talked about, while yang chakra is breathing life into form and it is the physical energy. I see, so when you killed the clone, you breathed life into it, then it became a tree, said Naruto. Exactly, my young apprentice. But let's get back to the original reason why I killed this zetsu. Madara plucked a leaf from one of its branches and held it between his fingers. In order to strengthen your fire jutsus, you must be able to take fire manipulation to the highest level. In order to do this, you must be able to convert a certain amount of chakra into fire and burn this leaf fully. Madara then plucked 2 more leaves. For wind and lightning, you must do the same. However, each element has different personalities, you could say, for usually our chakra nature is taken right out of our general personalities. So what is the personalities of fire, wind, and lightning? Asked Naruto. For fire, imagine your chakra as a ball, then compress the ball and release all that energy at once. Although I don't have lightning nature, I can still teach it to you. For lightning, imagine your chakra as fast streaks arcing about at irregular intervals. And for wind, cut your chakra in 2 and then grind them together like sharpening a blade. You're quite lucky, Naruto. Why? Asked Naruto. The 3 natures we have talked about happen to be the most offensive and combative elements of the 5 basic natures, explained Madara. He coughed a little after the sentence. Zetsu calls them the triple threat. But won't I need to learn any defensive jutsus? Questioned Naruto. That's why we have the Susanoo, clarified Madara. Susanoo? Said Naruto. It's when you use both Amaterasu and the Tsukuyami at the same time, creating the perfect defense, spoke Madara. Now start you fire manipulation training. Or do you require some more discipline? Naruto nodded, and he was about to start training when Zetsu appeared between the 2. Zetsu, said Madara curiously. Hello. This is great, you 2 aren't taking your naps, so now we can tell each other what we have discovered, said White Zetsu happily. Spit it out already, snapped Madara angrily, while Naruto's thoughts on his master was, is this guy bipolar? What we have discovered is quite entertaining, said Zetsu. Zetsu took out 2 folders from within his robe and handed one to Naruto. Naruto opened the folder to see a beautiful red-haired woman with amazing violet eyes. Who is she? Asked Naruto. This woman was amazingly beautiful. That is your mother, Kushina Uzumaki, said Zetsu. Naruto gasped and his eyes widened. Now that he looked at the folder, he could see some resemblance between them, such as the shape of their faces, and the shape of their eyes. There's more. Once we infiltrated the hospital, I allowed myself to be viewed by the security surveillance where later the Hokage and several high-ranking shinobi went to watch the tape, and I discovered something. This gained Naruto's attention. It turns out that your mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi before you. That seems to explain a lot of things, said Madara now that he thought about it. Maybe when your mother was carrying you within her womb, you subconsciously absorbed or inherited some of the Kyuubi's chakra, resulting in those whisker marks. Continued Madara. This could present ourselves with an opportunity to fuel the Geto Mazo with the Kyuubi's chakra. Yet, it could cause you to lose your startling recuperative powers and other powers you inherited. Naruto was absorbing everything. His mother was the container of the Kyuubi before him, and they now had the chance to further the Eye of the Moon plan, but at the cost of all the powers the Kyuubi gave him. And from what the folder said, his mother was dead. Yes, but that is not the most surprising thing, spoke Zetsu, cutting everyone off from their thoughts. It's who your father is that's the most surprising. Zetsu then handed Naruto the other folder he had. Naruto took the folder and opened it up, where he received the shock of his life. There right in the folder was a picture of the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Is this my? Said Naruto with a cold tone of voice. Yes, answered Zetsu. Naruto stared at the picture of his father. So many feelings running through him, but mainly anger, rage, animosity, and hatred. Madara was watching his student carefully. He then turned his gaze upon 4 more folders within the plant man's hands. Back to Naruto. Without even knowing, Naruto channeled chakra to his right, where the pattern of his Mangekyo took shape. His 3-pointed scythe pattern appeared in his eyes. Whenever Madara saw those eyes, the air would become denser and the light would become darker. His left eye started to bleed as he performed the first of his Mangekyo-S abilities. Amaterasu, whispered Naruto. Instantly, the folder of his father was set ablaze by the black flames being reduced to ashes in seconds. Naruto was angry. His rage was consuming him. His own father was the one that condemned him to a life of misery and loneliness, and the Sandaime Hokage said that he didn't know who his parents were, that he found him in a forest, but he lied. He lied right to his face. He knew all along. Jiraiya, he knew. Of course he knew. Kakashi Oswell, he must have known, and Tsunade, she was in on the loop too. He should have seen it sooner. All the attention that Jiraiya and Sarutobi gave him. They wouldn't care about some random orphan, they would care about the son of the Yondaime and the Kyuubi container. They all knew. The Sandaime, Jiraiya, Kakashi, Tsunade. They all knew, but they kept it from me. They kept the identity of the people most important to me, thought Naruto. Then he screamed at the top of his lungs, letting out all his anguish, and yet he unconsciously activated both Mangekyo. A white skeletal ribcage started to form around him, protecting him like armor. Then 4 white skeletal arms grew, tied together by bolts, and finally came the head of Naruto's Susanoo. Naruto's Susanoo was completely white in color. It had 4 skeletal arms, and in its ribcage had 4 horizontal, curved spikes on each rib. Its skull had 4 glowing yellow eyes and 2 forward-facing bull horns along with sharp fang-like teeth. After Naruto had stopped screaming, he examined his Susanoo, and he was impressed. Before he looked at Madara, his teacher. I am the curse of hatred, said Naruto grimly, and with a dark look in his eye which was only enhanced by the Susanoo surrounding him. Then his Susanoo roared as well, howling like a wolf. Madara just smirked. He now had the blonde's full loyalty and devotion, and his Susanoo was rather impressive as well. Zetsu, commanded Madara, still with that unrestrained smirk. Zetsu jumped a little at Madara's tone. Get ready to transplant my eyes, ordered Madara. Yes/yes, both have said at the same time. I leave my legacy to you, Naruto, and when the time is right, I will repay you for your aid someday, thought Madara. Dragon of the Night Wind. His breathing was calm and even. You couldn't see any inkling of fear and anxiety on his steady form. He had been training for the last 2 years for this, to become stronger, to kill. He had been put through the toughest training. He suffered broken bones, concussions, overwhelming blood loss. You name the injury, and he had it. But not once did a wound ever leave a scar. There was no mark of battle or proof that he was wounded. Only his skin, which had one scar, a scar that looked like it was hit by a lightning bolt and arced outwards. Ever since that time 2 years ago, he had become a changed person. He held no remorse, no hesitation. There was no shred of forgiveness in his heart. There was nothing in his heart. He doesn't remember what the trees looked like, nor the sky. He hasn't breathed in the scent of flowers in eternity. He couldn't remember what leaves sounded like when they flew in the wind. He hadn't felt the light of the sun beam down upon him. He couldn't remember what shape were the clouds. He wouldn't remember the feeling of glory the mountains gave off. He couldn't remember the faces of the people he called friends. No, family. The only thing he could remember from coming to the place he was at now was blood-red eyes and a chirping hand. The only thing he knew what was certain at the moment was the sweat on his body and the katana in his hand. The blonde, spiky-haired boy was now a man. At the age of 15, he could pass off as a 19-year-old. He was shirtless, and you could see all his rippling lean muscles, even through clothing. Muscle he had gained after intense training routines and exercises that many would believe he would die from such a workout. He had bloodied bandages on his hands, signs that he would hit something until the breaks. The attire he was wearing was black armored pants that covered his thighs and calves, black snug boots with claws on the toes and spiked spurs on the heel, and a light blue rope belt with the end hanging between his inner thigh and crotch ending below his knee. The katana's blade was silvery blue and the sword had no guard, just the way the blonde man liked it. Instead of the usual grip for katanas, this one was completely metal and had a gray grip, and to top it off, the sword had a long 23-inch blue rope that was connected to the hilt. He wondered how strong he really was. He had no one to compare his power to, except for the old man. But he was old, and he couldn't fight anymore. His withered body could barely walk 5 meters in a distance, so he really did have no one. Time was every shinobi's enemy. It was always ticking for everyone, even him. He believed he was extremely powerful, given the amount of chakra he has and the way he could use it. That was another thing he had improved, was his chakra control. Previously, he had quite horrendous chakra control, but that wasn't his fault. It's just he had too much chakra, and he couldn't really use like all of his classmates. He created Kage Bunshins every day until he worked his chakra control to perfection, whether it was by climbing waterfalls while balancing kunais on his fingers at the same time and simultaneously floating leaves all over his body. Some could think that was overkill, but he needed the training. His control was now flawless. He could utilize the Hokage's great strength if he wanted to, but he preferred quick, quiet kills over slamming your fist into someone's face and breaking their jaws at the same time. That's why he chose to take up Kenjutsu, because it complemented his wind nature perfectly. His skill in nature manipulation had taken the most leaps and bounds. He could now cut raging infernos 3 times his size in half with his wind nature. He could set fire to a waterfall and shatter tornadoes with his lightning. His Jinjutsu skill, which was impossible for him to do, was now possible thanks to his increased intelligence and control. He could now cast Jinjutsu without even using the Sharingan. And his Jinjutsus caused his victims to go brain dead and insane because of his vivid imagination. He could also perform medical ninjutsu, but his prowess in the art was nowhere near that of Tsunade's, but it was good enough so if he ever got into a bad situation, he could pull himself out of it. Along with all his other skills, his proficiency with weapons was quite admirable with the Sharingan. He could now aim and throw his kunai with pinpoint strikes. He tested this out by throwing a kunai at a fly that was buzzing around, bisecting it from its wings. But now he was testing out his reactions and senses. He was blindfolded. The only thing he could use was his hearing, smell, touch, and taste. He was facing multiple white zetsus, each armed to the bone with weapons such as swords, kunais, war fans, or just their fists. When they converged on him, he didn't flinch, he didn't even move a muscle. He channeled chakra flow into his katana that was designed to absorb the energy. Now his weapon was coated with wind, increasing its cutting power and lethality. One zetsu came up behind him hoping to take him by surprise, but the scarred man turned around and bisected the artificial human. He blocked a flying kunai aimed at the side of his rib with the flat side of his katana. He grabbed it out of the air and threw at another zetsu where it pierced the artificial human skull. He slashed another zetsu, the wind on his katana making him more efficiently deadly. He sealed his katana on a portable seal on his right wrist. He went through a couple of hand signs and breathed in and shouted, "Futon, Koryu Kisoku no Jutsu." Wind release. Great dragon breath technique. He blew out a massive head of a Japanese dragon made of lacerating wind that was 4 times his size. It flew at the Zetsu with overwhelming speed that it tore apart anything in its path until scraps were left. The Zetsu didn't have time to blink before they dropped to the ground, dead, bisecting cuts all over their bodies, and if they had blood, he was sure the ground would be coated with it. He unsealed his katana from his wrist and parried a kunai blow to the head from a brave Zetsu. He channeled wind chakra into his sword, which cut through the kunai like butter and killed the Zetsu. He heard movement to his left and kicked an unfortunate Zetsu in the face, impacting against his jaw and sending him flying back a few meters away, hitting other Zetsus like bowling pins. He heard multiple footsteps running at him, and like before, he sealed his katana away. He went through a couple of hand signs and spoke the name of the jutsu. Katan, Ryuin Hoka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Dragon Flame Release Song Technique. Yelled the blonde man as he spat out a number of dragon-shaped fire heads flying at amazing speeds. The flame heads hit their marks as 5 Zetsus were incinerated by the hot fire. The man unsealed his katana and started to tear through the ranks of the Zetsus. His taijutsu was interesting as it appeared he was dancing when he was actually using agility mixed in with strength to deal powerful blows to his enemy. A Zetsu cried a battle shout as he went up to attack the man in blind rage at the sight of its brethren being slaughtered. But its surroundings changed all around it. It looked back behind itself to see all the other Zetsus, but now they looked like the blonde man with his eyes blindfolded, each holding a katana in hand. Enraged at the sight, the Zetsu started to ruthlessly attack its comrades, hoping to find out which was its real target. The Zetsu was sadly caught in a genjutsu where he was killing its friends as if they were the blonde himself. The man in a swift motion stabbed his katana in the ground where an unsuspecting Zetsu was trying to crawl his way over to him, but it was rewarded with a sword penetrating through its skull. The blonde then quickly went through some more hand signs. Raitun, Jabashi, Lightning Release, Electromagnetic Murder. Yelled the man as he slammed his palms on the ground as an electric wave burst forth, shocking everyone that was caught before their nervous system was fried. They soon dropped to the ground, dead, with heavy thuds, and they were smoldering a little, and lightning was coursing around their bodies. The man picked up his katana again and started channeling his chakra into it. He stabbed a Zetsu behind him without even turning around. The clone of Hashirama had tried to sneak up on the man, but it had failed in its attempt. The blonde took the kunai that was in the Zetsu's hand, channeled some lighting chakra through it, and threw the knife at another Zetsu, penetrating into its skull and out the other end, and stabbing another in the head as it stopped its flight. The man couldn't see his handiwork, but he knew he scored some points in when the chakra signatures disappeared. 3 Zetsus jumped him from behind, where the 4 combatants were locked in close combat. The man dodged a kunai attack from a Zetsu and let it slide past him, where he kicked the Zetsu and killed it with a lighting-charged kunai he had unsealed from his wrist seals. He then killed the other 2 in a horizontal sweeping slash, where it bisected the 2 plant men in half as their torsos fell to the ground, leaking white ooze. A large group of Zetsus started to rush at the lone man with angry looks on their faces. The blonde, in retaliation, unsealed a Fuma shuriken from his left wrist. He channeled his wind chakra into the large shuriken, adding an extra set of rotating blades made of wind, and whispered Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. He threw the 1 shuriken, which then became 100 shuriken, and all of them were wind-enhanced, where they cut through the Zetsus like sheep to the slaughter and like a butcher's knife to meat. The man turned and faced another wave of Zetsus. Sanzangarasu no Jutsu, Scattering 1,000 Crows Technique, said the man as 1,000 crows flew in from behind him. He could use this as the jutsu was just sitting around the place. The crows attacked the Zetsus, distracting them from the real threat, which was the man and his katana. He passed by them within a blink of an eye, and all their heads were lopped off their shoulders with one fell swoop. One final party of Zetsus rushed at the man, trying to end the battle that had been going on. The man sealed his katana and held out his right hand. Instantly, a Rasengan appeared until the man pumped wind chakra into it, which then became a spinning white shuriken with a light blue ball in the middle. Futon, Rasen Shuriken. yelled the man as he hurled the shuriken at the Zetsus. When it made contact, it expanded into a dome of small wind blades that attacked the Zetsus on a molecular level and finally killing them as their chakra network was severed. The jutsu was more like a poison rather than a series of attacks. When the dome died down, a crater was left with the Zetsus lying on the floor. The man didn't celebrate, he didn't cheer, he just stood there, unwavering, until he turned his attention to someone clapping. There was an extremely old man with a kusarigama in hand clapping as he watched the spectacle with a small smile on his face, but a dark look in his only visible eye. Very good, very good. Praised the man who was unfazed by all the deaths. You have come far. One of those Zetsus were at least high Chunin level, and yet you made them look like academy students. No one can dispute your power. Your strength rivals my own back when I was young and at my prime, but you still require more refinement as you are still not as strong as me. You're at least 2/3 of my power back when I was in my prime. I did say you rivaled me, said the man with a sickly smirk. And you didn't even use your Sharingan against them. Even more impressive. The blond man removed the cloth around his eyes, revealing a blood-red pair of fully matured Sharingan, which could probably kill someone just by looking at them. However, they were not his eyes. Those eyes were the eyes the old man had. His original pair before they were transplanted for another pair, but he passed his own eyes to the young man, and in return Blonde gave his own to Parched Man. He had spiky, sun-kissed, silky blonde hair with chin-length strands that framed the sides of his face where his sideburns were supposed to be, and he had a few strands that fell between his eyes and parted at the bridge of his nose. Just imagine Danai Ichigo hair, but yellow in color. And he had a low, spiky ponytail, which was wrapped halfway with top bandages. Over time, his hair had become less wild and untamed, and became smooth and silken, losing some of the spike to his hair. He was also 5'9" in height instead of the midget height of 4'11". However, the man used to have whisker-like marks on his cheeks, but they were gone, revealing nothing. The Sharingan is merely a tool. Just having it doesn't make me powerful. Unless I train my other skills, then there's no point in using the Sharingan in battle if I get killed, stated the person blankly as he stared at the old man. Quite right, Naruto. The old man then started having coughing fits and brought a hand to his mouth and coughed blood into his palm. The 15-year-old who could pass off as an adult was slightly worried for his sensei, even though he didn't show it. He walked slowly up to his master and stood before him. You shouldn't overexert yourself with your heavy breathing, Madara sensei, said Naruto emotionlessly as he stood before the shinobi legend. You will be in a similar situation when it is your time, said Madara as he finished his coughing and glared a little at the blonde. The legendary Uchiha was now weak. He could no longer perform the abilities and techniques he had in life, but he was able to raise Naruto to suit his needs and continue his plans. But then there was the problem with the fake Madara, who was manipulating the Akatsuki and Nagato. We'll see about that, said Naruto as he started to walk off toward his bed, which was right in front of Madara. At first, Naruto was uneasy sleeping in front of his sensei. He got the feeling that he was being watched, and he was partially right. But eventually he got over his unease and was able to get some rest. INF Form of the Mummy. Naruto sheathed his katana back in its sheath, which was right next to his bed. And then he dozed off, not dreaming about anything in particular. Madara was watching his apprentice sleep. These past 2 years had been interesting to say the least. Naruto's potential and power soared when he used the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu in conjunction with his training. Naruto was easily and strength shinobi, where even the 5 Kage would have trouble fighting him, although whether he could fight them all at once was a different thing. And he was quite the ingenious shinobi, where he quickly came up with ways to overcome his weaknesses and flaws, such as that last jutsu he used, Futon, Raisin Shuriken. At first, Naruto was unable to add any of his chakra natures into the Rasengan, as the result would just blow up in his face. He figured a way out around the weakness with clones. However, he could at first only do it with clones, but he said it wasn't practical enough. So he used that Uzumaki blood of his and his imagination to overcome that drawback. He created 2 seals on the palms of his hands that collects his chakra and stores it. Whenever he wanted to form a Raisin Shuriken or a chakra nature enhanced Rasengan, he would just activate the seal and it would convert his chakra into whatever one of his natures he wanted. Not even Madara or anyone else could think up such a diverse way to use seals. Although to form the seals took Naruto some time. Around a year was needed until the seals properly formed, and only then you needed to have precise control of your chakra and be well versed in Fuinjutsu to achieve such a thing. Later, when Naruto had nearly finished his daily training, Zetsu and Madara extracted what little of the Kyuubi's chakra Naruto had in his body. They were able to get a small portion of the Kyuubi's chakra from Naruto's body, resulting in the loss of his whisker marks on his cheeks. However, he still retained his remarkable healing abilities, which pleased Madara to no end. But one thing that surprised Madara were the remaining folders that Zetsu brought to him years ago. He would never have guessed what was in those folders, but it also explained some of Naruto's immense potential. Zetsu appeared before Madara, his Akatsuki cloak quite clear in the dark hovel. "Yes, Zetsu. I have returned with unfortunate news," spoke Zetsu. "I was unable to get the identity of the person who claims to be Madara. In order to find out his identity, I must return to Konohagakure." "I don't see the problem to which you're referring to," asked Madara. He didn't see how hard it was to go in and get information. "The problem is that the top-ranking ninja of the village have seen me on their video surveillance. You don't forget a person like me any day. It's also likely that the Hokage has informed the Jonin of the village about my appearance and infiltration, and they have now stationed their ANBU Black Ops around the village, keeping even greater watch than they did 2 years," explained Zetsu. "Then why don't we just send more white Zetsus?" bit back Madara. "Even though the copies can take on the appearance of others, what's stopping Konoha from discovering that they are not who they say they are? The clones aren't really that strong, and against a ninja village we would need an army," elaborated Zetsu. Madara didn't say anything other than looking away from Zetsu and staring into space. "Do you think he's ready, Zetsu?" asked Madara curiously. He wanted to know if Naruto was ready for the task of capturing Jinchurikis. He had to be sure no matter how powerful Naruto is. Only the strongest could face a Bijou without any qualms or hesitation, and he and Hashirama were among the few. He then complimented the Yondaime Hokage for facing the strongest among the 9. "No doubt in my mind that he is more than ready," spoke Zetsu. "I was wrong about the prediction that the statue would keep supplying me chakra for 3 years, and it's been 2 already," spoke Madara hoarsely. Even with a portion of the Kyuubi's chakra filling the statue, it would not be enough to save Madara. In fact, it was that chakra that had been keeping him alive up until this moment. The jutsu he used to bring Naruto back to life would take the user's life in return for bringing others back to the world of the living. The statue was a massive source of life, and it still wouldn't be able to sway him. However, I only have 3 months left to live before the statue stops feeding me chakra, and until then I will train Naruto even harder, so that he can kill the fake me," informed Madara, even though it sounded strange to say such a thing. "Very well," said Zetsu as he melded with the ground. Nagato, acting through his guise of pain, was watching Amigakure in the tallest tower of the village. "Come on, must the tallest tower in every city be the lair of the villain? Is there some kind of super-villain rule book? Never mind, back to Pain." Pain called out a voice behind the orange-haired man, who didn't move to face the voice, because in his mind there was no need. It was his beautiful partner and oldest friend, Conan. She stared at him with an impassive gaze and neutral face as always, the tragedies of life always making her feel pain. But Nagato knew that was just her way of hiding her pain, for her pain could also be used against her. "Yes, Conan," said Pain without turning to look at her raider. He kept staring out at his village. "We need one more member among the Akatsuki," informed Conan, bringing up a subject that was on Pain's mind. "I am well aware. With Orochimaru's defection from the organization, we do need to fill his place. But we also need to get the Sky Ring from his possession before we allow any other member in the Akatsuki. But finding him is like trying to find a speck of salt on a beach, and if we do find him, he'll most likely escape like the scavenger he has always been," spoke Pain with contempt, as Orochimaru want on his friend list. "Zetsu has informed me of a potential candidate, but he has yet to tell me this person's identity, nor his capabilities, or anything else," said Conan, still with that neutral tone of speaking. "Zetsu, he always did have an eye for talent, as a few years ago it was him that informed us of Deidara as a potential member, and he was right. If Zetsu is correct about this candidate, then this person might become a potential and powerful recruit," spoke Pain. "Do you think this recruit can be trusted?" And even if we do let him into the Akatsuki, will he be able to me? But she was cut off by Pain. Conan, I understand that you have doubts about some of the less savory members of the Akatsuki, such as Sasori and Haiden, spoke Pain. Conan still had her neutral face, but she knew Pain was right since she never approved of the bloodlust of Sasori and Haiden. But we must trust Zetsu's judgment on this matter. Maybe this shinobi may not be as violent like the other members, said Pain in his stoic voice. Tell me, has Zetsu contacted this person? Asked Pain emotionlessly. Zetsu has told me that he has not set up any contact with the candidate, and it will take at least 3 months before he can discern the persons of interest location, notified Conan. And our plans have been set back by a year, in part due to the meddling of the Leaf Village and Jiraiya of the Sannin, continued Conan. Pain didn't seem fazed by this news. In fact, this was good news. They could now be more prepared for the extraction of the Biju. The ripple-eyed man looked up at the falling rain. What is it? Asked Conan, generally curious. The winds of change are almost upon us, said Pain as he looked up at the sky. Soon the world will be one step closer to peace, said Pain. Orochimaru was coughing and wheezing in his bed. Things did not work out as planned. The body he was inhabiting was already rejecting him. He didn't know how it came to be this way. He had 1 more year left, 1 more before he was required to switch bodies again. Sasuke wasn't ready. He wasn't as powerful as he wanted, so his body was off limits. And he couldn't take Kabuto's body. He was just as important. Who else would keep his test subjects alive, and who else could create the medicine for Orochimaru? He coughed again. His form was racked with pain, and he was spitting out blood. He needed to shed his skin again, like a snake. He needed a young, rejuvenating being. He wanted the Sharingan, yes, but he wanted Sasuke at the peak of his power. There was still time, but Orochimaru was blissfully unaware that time was every shinobi's enemy. He just refused to believe it. He heard a knock at the door, and he hailed the person to come in. It was his right-hand man Kabuto Yakushi, his most trusted and loyal subordinate. He was carrying a tray filled with bottles and herbs and various utensils for creating medical alchemies. I have brought your medicine, Orochimaru-sama, said Kabuto with that suave voice of his which makes this vulgar feeling rise up in me. If Kabuto was likened to any animal, he would be a snake, extremely deceptive and cunning. Give it to me, Kabuto, you fool, hissed Orochimaru. Kabuto handed him a small vial filled with green liquid. He uncorked the bottle and forced it down his throat. The liquid tasted vile, but if it helped Orochimaru's health, he wouldn't care. Orochimaru-sama, you will have to switch bodies soon. Your health is deteriorating every second you wait. Sasuke isn't ready to switch bodies, so you will have to take another, in order to extend your life, assured Kabuto. I suggest taking a body of one of the low-level Chunin under our command. Yes, very good, Kabuto. Tricky as ever. Summon one of the Chunin under the facade of a promotion, and preferably if his body was weak, so that way I can transfer bodies sooner and take over Sasuke'S, commanded Orochimaru. Kabuto left to select 1 weak Chunin for his master. Soon I will have Sasuke'S body, and not even the Akatsuki can kill me, and I will also have the Mangekyo. Sasuke-kun, you think you could hide such powerful eyes from me, plotted Orochimaru. It's a good thing he killed the Kyuubi brat all those years ago. It has set the Akatsuki back by a few years and removed a potential thorn from my side. In a dark room, all that was heard was birds chirping, and all that you could see was lightning crackling around. Chidori Senbon, yelled the Sasuke as he fired his new Chidori variation at the archery targets, all of them hitting its mark. There was several other targets around the room. Sasuke activated his Chidori again and shouted, Chidori Nagashi. Lightning started sizzling around the young Uchiha. The lightning struck the targets, destroying them. Sasuke had changed over the 2 years. He was now taller, and his face was more masculine, and he was lean and muscular. He now wore a white long-sleeved shirt which was open at the torso with a small Uchiha crest near the collar. He now has blue cloth that wraps around his waist that is suspended by a purple rope belt that is tied in a bow and black arm guards that went up to his forearms. His personality hadn't changed much since he left Konohagakure. He was still arrogant, and he still had dark thoughts about murdering his brother. I don't know what the girls saw in him, but spending years planning to kill someone is pretty emo. But one thing that had changed was that his arrogance had somehow grown. thanks in part to Orochimaru constantly praising him. He now had a mindset that only a Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha. Guess he didn't pay attention in history class when they were having a lesson on Hashirama Senju defeating Madara Uchiha, dumbass. His thoughts were on how much progress he made in his training. Orochimaru claimed he was about Midgenin level, but Jonin level wasn't good enough. His brother Itachi was an ANBU captain at the age of 13, and yet Sasuke hadn't reached that level yet. I need more power. Even though I have the Mangekyo, my other skills are not on par with that of Itachi's. Then he remembered something. He remembered when he got his Mangekyo and how he got it. In his mind, killing Naruto was justified. He needed the power, and the opportunity had presented itself to him. And he did just what his brother told him to do. He took the life of his best friend. But now Sasuke had little room in his heart for remorse. When he kills his brother, he would restart his clan, and the Uchiha name would be redeemed. It had been 3 months since Madara said he was going to die. He told Naruto the news, but the Uzumaki just took it like he normally would, emotionlessly. He did feel sorry that the man who was the closest thing to family he has ever had was going to die, but he didn't show his sorrow at the thought, but hid it behind a blank facade so not to show the world. Naruto, said Madara. Naruto just stared at him with his active Sharingan, and with that blank look of his, that face seemed to unnerve the white half of Zetsu. Soon I am going to die, in less than a week, spoke Madara. Naruto didn't respond, nor did her physically respond. He was above such weak things such as sorrow and regret. Today you leave the safety of the hovel and go out into the world, said Madara. Your mission is to deploy the infinite Tsukuyomi on the world by gathering the Biju and reviving the Jubi. But before you can begin the Eye of the Moon plan, you need to eliminate the fake Madara that has been manipulating the Akatsuki and my pawn, Nagato, from within the shadows under my own name. And before you revive the Jubi, you have to revive myself by using my previous Rinnegan that has been transplanted into Nagato. Since your chakra signature is similar to mine in part to the blood transfusion I gave you all those years ago, you will be able to force Nagato to use the Rinne Tenii no Jutsu to revive me, continued Madara. I understand what I have to do, spoke Naruto darkly and with the utmost confidence and determination, his Sharingan blazing. Very good. Zetsu will be assisting you with everything. He is now your subordinate and will obey any command you give out. Even your own voice will silence Nagato's should Zetsu be ordered by the Akatsuki to do anything. Zetsu is exceptional at infiltration and espionage, spoke Madara, where Zetsu melded from a wall and opening his flytrap appendage. You can count on me, shouted White Zetsu gleefully. The black half seemed to sigh at its white half. But he's fucking weak, hissed Madara at his failed experiment, obviously irked by the clone's blatant rudeness and for interrupting him. Naruto slightly nodded at his teacher, who was right about Zetsu. He is weak. Zetsu deflated a little, but quickly broke from his slight depression and smiled widely, happy and cheery as always. Very well, said Naruto, understanding what was required of him. The blonde watched as Madara disconnected himself from the statue via unplugging the tubes, cutting off his chakra supply that was keeping him alive. Now go, my apprentice, my legacy, my heir, and do not fail me, said Madara, and as his final action, the old man grasped at the sockets of his eyes and pulled out the twin Sharingan from his sockets and grasped them firmly in his hands just before his life passed on, the Shinigami claiming his soul. I won't, sensei, said Naruto. Naruto, after 2 years and 3 months of living in a dark cave, was going to leave. He walked up to a large rock that blocked the exit to the outside world and his own freedom. If Naruto was hesitant about leaving the hovel, then he wouldn't show it. Hesitation was a weakness that didn't have. Naruto activated his Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. His Eternal Mangekyo was a cross between Madara's and his own. Its pattern was 3 sides with the back of the blade having a point on it, but it had Madara's pinwheel pattern that was located in the middle of his eye that surrounded his pupil. Only the colors were inverted. The pinwheel was black instead of red, and the concentric tomo were red, and the pupil, instead of its circular shape, had a 3-pointed shuriken as a pupil. Naruto activated his Susanoo to crush the exit and walk amongst the world. Naruto's was completely white in color, even the fiery aura was white. It had 4 clawed arms, its ribcage had horizontal spikes on it, and its skull had a pair of forward-facing bull horns and small spikes on its chin and 4 ominous glowing yellow eyes and sharp fang-like teeth. The Susanoo raised its fist and smashed the rock that was blocking the way with relative ease using its incredible strength. Naruto, still encased in the Susanoo, called out to his subordinate Zetsu. "Zetsu, get me my armor and weapons," yelled Naruto without looking back at the plant man. Zetsu nodded and went to retrieve the things with utter obedience, like a dog serving its master. Naruto, for the first time in 2 years, saw sunlight. It radiated on him. It was warm and bright and full of hope. Everything Naruto wasn't, nor will he ever be again. The Uzumaki deactivated his Susanoo and surveyed his surroundings, glimpsing the world around him. The first thing he noticed was a large skeleton that looked like it belonged to a great beast that died there long ago. And he also noticed that he was in a basin that was dotted with cliffs and rocky areas. Then he sensed Zetsu return with all the things he asked for. The plant man handed him all the necessary clothes that he would use as a ninja. A few minutes later, Naruto was fully dressed in his own signature attire. He wore the same black pants and boots along with the same long, blue belt rope. But now he had black armor on his chest along with black metal pieces of armor on his pecs. The armor did little to hide his killer figure, as you could still see all his rippling muscles move with every twitch. He had pronged black metal shoulder pads and pronged black clawed metal gloves and bracers. And to top it off, he had a black ankle-length, sleeveless coat. The edges of the coat were tattered and frayed with bright red flame motifs on the edges, along with a symbol of a black, curving dragon with sharp claws, a long tongue, a spiked back, and streamlined body surrounded by white on his back. The coat also had a hood and a long collar that held 3 silver magatama by strings. The armor was specifically made for Naruto as a birthday present from Madara. It was made from strong, flexible materials that allowed for protection and comfortable movement that didn't restrict his speed or agility, nor was it uncomfortable in certain parts. The strong wind of the forest were now freely blowing Naruto's hair, his short ponytail whipping in the air and moving as if it had a life of its own. Zesta walked up behind Naruto with a scroll and katana in hand, where he gave them to Naruto and commented, "Very handsome." But the blonde thought that comment would be weird if Zetsu wasn't a clone. "I will head to Konohagakure and see if I can discover the identity of the Madara impersonator. This also gives me the opportunity to infiltrate my father's estate and see if I can get my hands on the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God Techink, or any of my father's other jutsu. As much as I hate the man, I can't dispute the fact that when it came to jutsu, he was a genius," said Naruto. "Okay, but you have to make a name for yourself. Soon the Akatsuki only accepts rank shinobi, and I have upped those chances by telling them that I found someone to fill the void left by Orochimaru," spoke Zetsu. Naruto visibly scowled at that name. Suffice to say, he wasn't Orochimaru's biggest fan. Naruto nodded at Zetsu's plan. Also, this graveyard could turn out to be a great base of operations. Zetsu have white Zetsus hollow out this basin and create a base where everything I would need to utilize assets would be found, such as sleeping arrangements, armory, medical wing, and maybe add in a library. Also bury the old goat's body and retrieve my eyes from his corpse," commanded Naruto. "I will have to go by a different name. The world believes that Naruto Uzumaki is dead. So how does Ryu Yoke's sound?" said Naruto. He took his katana sheath and placed it on his back. Zetsu didn't say anything, for he was saying the name countless times in his head. "I like it / I like it," said the two halves at the same time. "Goodbye, Ryu," said Zetsu before he melded into the ground. Naruto, now known as Ryu, breathed in before walking to Konoha to the south. No one noticed the small tear on his cheek. That tear meant something to Naruto. Even though Madara and Naruto argued, he still looked up to the man, because he was the closest thing he had to a father, and Madara himself knew it. In Konoha, at the main gate, the 2 eternal gate guards of Konoha, Izumo Kimizuki and Kotetsu Hagane, were playing cards to pass by time. They were easily bored since no one would come to the gate and check into the village, so you have to pity them and find it logical that they were even bored. They have been given this certain post for the last 2 years. Even though the pay was good, it of course came with drawbacks. The only people that came through the gate were civilians, traveling merchants, and the occasional musician, along with some of their own ninja. But today was going to be very different. "Hey Izumo, when is something interesting gonna happen?" whined Kotetsu. "Got any twos?" "Be careful what you wish for, you might just get," replied Izumo with a smirk. "Go fish." "It's just I miss the old days when we would run around chasing Nar." Kotetsu stopped his sentence before he recited the forbidden name of the village. "I know. I miss him too. He always made the village seem like a happier place too, but the damn civilians don't know the difference between a kunai and the scroll it's sealed into. I miss his pranks. I particularly like the one where he painted the Hokage monument in the middle of the day without anybody seeing him, especially with that hideous orange jumpsuit he used to wear," said Izumo. Both men chuckled at the thought of the blonde boy's antics. "Or the time that he painted every major clan's underwear orange," chuckled Kotetsu at the memory of Naruto and his pranks. Their thoughts were soon interrupted when a hooded figure wearing peculiar armor, a black, sleeveless coat, and carrying a katana on his back walked up to the front gate and almost past the registration booth, completely ignoring the two chunin. "Hey!" shouted Kotetsu in order to get the man's attention. The hooded figure stopped in his stride into the village and looked back at the two gate guards. His hood was shrouding his eyes, and the only parts of his face were his mouth and chin. When Izumo and Kotetsu looked at him, both men could see a man who had the aura of a powerful shinobi. The hooded man looked at them. All he could see were weak shinobi who would fall on their own kunais. "You have to register before you can enter the village," continued Kotetsu. The figure just stared at him blankly, which seemed to unnerve both men as it felt like the void was staring back at them. "Very well," said the figure. He strutted up to the booth and looked at the two chunin before him. "Okay, let me get out the papers, and you can sign the waivers which will allow you free pass into the village," said Izumo as he scratched his head. The figure just shrugged at what the ninja said. "But first we have to ask you your name." "Name?" asked Izumo. "Ryu Yoke's," said the figure, but before the two gate guards could do anything, they made the mistake of looking into a pair of Sharingan eyes. A few seconds passed, and the ninjas dropped to the ground with loud thuds. Kotetsu fell on the floor while Izumo's head banged against the desk. Naruto/Ryu checked Izumo's pulse to see if he was dead or alive. Sometimes he could accidentally kill people when using his genjutsu, where they became brain dead. Naruto could feel the even rhythm of Izumo's heart, signifying that he was just unconscious. He knew that ANBU teams are dispatched every 2 hours according to Zetsu's information, so that leaves a limited amount of time to get the information and get out. His father's estate was secondary. Also, he was purposely cloaking his chakra so the barrier core wouldn't detect him, but the Hyuga clan would be a thorn. He'd have to watch out for them. Ryu walked away from the booth and continued on into the village, intent on discovering who his teacher's fake was. Zetsu was right. The village has become lazy in the years of temporary peace. I wonder if the village will fail to function as a hidden village, thought Naruto as he walked through the streets of Konoha. No wonder Orochimaru was able to get in easily and launch an invasion at the same time. As Ryu walked among the people, they didn't see his face because of his black hood, but some glanced at him because of his samurai-like armor and long katana. Naruto didn't care why they were looking at him. All that matters is the fact that his goal was more important. "If I was to take a guess where they register ninjas in their ninja log, it would be around the Yinbyu headquarters or the Hokage Tower," mused Ryu. "Hokage Tower first, then head to ANBU HQ. When I don't find anything, shouldn't be that hard." He was so caught up in his thoughts that he didn't register the shoulder that bumped into his. He heard a rude shout saying, "Watch it, buddy," from behind him. A few minutes earlier, Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba were walking down the street reminiscing about their recent missions and the exciting things they did. "And I was all like Kacho, and Hinata was popping the dudes with her Jukin and Shino. Well, he was just being Shino," said Kiba, excited by wallowing in his own glory. Shikamaru didn't seem to care, and Choji was stuffing his face with chips again, and he wasn't listening to what Kiba had to say. "Troublesome Kiba, why can't you tell a story normally like the writer of this story that we're in?" said Shikamaru lazily and looking up at the sky. "Probably at me, the writer." His fellow shinobis looked at Shikamaru as if he had lost all his intelligence, which was truly something to behold. As a dumb Shikamaru was hard to imagine. Shikamaru, we're not in a story, spoke Choji as he stopped eating his chips when he heard what Shikamaru said. Screw what Shikamaru said back to, but he was cut off as a shoulder bumped into his own. Now, Naruto stopped his track and turned to who he bumped into when the person rudely addressed him. And he was a little surprised when he glanced at Kiba. Of all the shinobi he had to bump into, it had to be the one covered with fleas and plagued with perverted thoughts. Not to mention Kiba's voice was loud. He liked quiet people, like Zetsu when the plant man was not all hyperactive. Naruto ignored Kiba and kept on walking. He didn't want to deal with people he disliked. Besides, he had something important to do. Besides, he had other problems like finding out about the identity of the fake Madara and taking what was rightfully his. When Ryu started to walk away, that was indeed a move that pissed Kiba off. "Hey!" yelled Kiba at the black-clad mystery person who ignored him and just kept on walking. Kiba, I don't think we should pick a fight with him," said Choji as he was a little intimidated by the samurai-like shinobi, especially that pointy katana he had. "Maybe you should forget about him," suggested Choji. "No, someone's got to teach this prick some lessons in manners," said Kiba as he stomped off after the man. Akamaru, who no one had noticed till now, just paw-palmed his face. His master was always getting into trouble. Maybe the dog should put Kiba on a leash. "Troublesome. Come on, Choji, let's hope he doesn't get into too much trouble or gets himself killed," said Shikamaru as he lazily walked after Kiba with Choji and Akamaru following behind him. Naruto had the Hokage Tower in his sight. Things were going smoothly for him and his mission. He then felt a hand clasp his left shoulder, which also made him stop in the middle of the road. And when he looked back, it was Kiba, who was very angry as he was grinding his teeth and his eyebrow was ticking. Thankfully, the hood Naruto had on still overshadowed his eyes so nobody could see his Sharingan. The reason why I didn't turn them off is because he was just far too awesome for that. "Hey guy, I think you should apologize," said Kiba sternly. Ryu couldn't care less, so he was just going to play dumb if that was possible for someone like him. "Apologize for what? Walking on the street," said Naruto. This statement pissed Kiba off some more, and he felt obliged to choke the man for his rudeness, and also his thoughts were on the line of this fucking smartass. "You think you're funny, huh?" said Kiba sarcastically. Ryu just responded with another smartass answer. "No, I think I'm a comedian. I can be quite funny at times," answered Ryu with an annoying smirk. What he said just sent Kiba over the edge, who was barely restraining his anger. Kiba tightened his grip on Naruto's armored shoulder and was digging his claws into the armor, which was barely scratching it. "Listen here, you will AP," but he was cut off as Ryu got out of his grip by spinning to his back, grabbed his right arm, and pinned him to the ground, with his left hand clutching Kiba's skull and his right hand holding Kiba's arm in the air. Everyone that was on the street turned and saw some stranger pinning Kiba on the ground, as the Ninkin user was currently eating dirt. "Holy shit, he's fast. I barely saw him move, let alone flinch. Who is this guy?" thought Kiba as all he could see was the dirty ground below him. Shikamaru and Choji arrived along with Akamaru, where the two shinobi and the ninja dog all sighed at the scene in front of them. Shikamaru was right on the money about Kiba getting in trouble. "Troublesome. Mister, could you get off my friend? Whatever he's done, then I formally apologize for it. Troublesome," muttered Shikamaru as this whole situation was troublesome to him. In fact, his whole existence was troublesome. Naruto just looked back at Shikamaru, and he sighed at the shadow user. He let go of Kiba, who scurried off and rejoined his two friends and dog. "Keep your dog on a shorter leash. I have little tolerance for stupidity and ignorance," spat Ryu at the three shinobi. Shikamaru and Choji were taken back by this comment and decided to back down from the fight. Kiba just scowled at his dog comments and growled a little. Unfortunately for him, Naruto heard the growl. "Watch it, mutt, before I neuter you," threatened Naruto while leaking a bit of killer intent, which made everyone on the street sweat a little and take a step back in fear. Naruto restarted his trek back to the Hokage Tower, not looking behind him, not bothered to look behind him. "Wait," yelled Shikamaru, which was weird because Shikamaru was never a loud person. Naruto halted in his stride and turned to Shikamaru. "What's your name?" asked Shikamaru. "Ryu Yoke's," said Naruto simply. Deciding he had enough with idiots, Ryu turned his back on the trio of shinobi and continued on his original path towards the Hokage Tower. But Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at him. as if there was something about him that was strange. With the Hokage Tower in sight, Naruto took to the rooftops and he whispered the name of a very useful infiltration jutsu. Maisegakure no Jutsu, hiding with camouflage technique. Naruto disappeared from existence, but in fact made himself invisible to the naked eye. Naruto practiced this jutsu with Black Zetsu, who was an amazing sensor and could detect chakra from even lands as far away as the land of water. This caused Naruto's skill with the jutsu to rival that of Mu, the second Sasuke'S, where he was utterly invisible except for the extremely small air current distortion that would happen. Ryu snuck into the tower with relative ease, getting past the ANBU easily, who were busy doing what ANBU did best. He traveled the halls of the tower in relative silence, since it was the only thing that could be able to give away his position, since no one could smell him or sense him, see him, but they could touch him. But with his Sharingan it wouldn't be a problem because of his skill, and you'd be lucky just to find him in the air current distortion. However, Naruto couldn't use this jutsu while in combat, so it was designed more for tactical espionage rather than combat. Then he found the door he was looking for, which led him to his objective, the ninja registration log. He opened the door and tried to hold back sigh of relief since no one was inside. He closed the door behind him and deactivated his invisibility, allowing his form to be viewed. Luckily, there was a computer in the room for processing shit. He sat in the chair and hacked into the account. The password was number-coded with 4 digits, and with his enhanced vision could see the finer prints on the pad, which had barely passable encryption since they didn't protect their information that well. But since this was the least guarded area in the village, it was to be expected. He narrowed the list of results to any Uchiha disappearances over the last 30 years. Based upon the evidence of the Kyuubi attack 15 years ago, this person had the Sharingan to control the Kyuubi. There was no other explanation since Hashirama Senju was dead, and only Nagato could control Biju with his Rinnegan. But the leader of the Akatsuki was nowhere near the village during the attack, according Zetsu. He narrowed the field of information with Uchiha disappearances. Because of the Uchiha massacre at the hands of Itachi, there was only one person that survived, and that was Sasuke. So if there were any survivors, they weren't in the village at the time. But it turned out all the Uchiha were massacred, well, except Sasuke. But forget about that emo. And this was all the easy. There had only been one real disappearance. Obito Uchiha, said Naruto as he examined the name. He clicked on the profile, and an image of Obito appeared. To Naruto, he looked like an idiot with those goggles of his. But Madara taught him that looks were deceiving, and his sensei was the prime example. Even though Madara was an old goat, he was still powerful. That was what Naruto couldn't dispute about the mummy Sink Yuan. He first started training. He bet the old man could kick his ass back then, but that was different now, since he could have killed the man whenever he wanted at the time. He broke his thoughts over Madara and returned to reading Obito's profile. Died on a mission during the final period of the Third Shinobi World War, trying to rescue teammate Rin Noara, was crushed under a rock avalanche by enemy ninja, but not before giving his Sharingan to Kakashi Hatake. Naruto gritted his teeth at the man. So that was how Kakashi got the Sharingan. And this Obito Uchiha was a student of Minato Namikaze, Naruto's father. Body was never recovered, presumed to be deceased. So Obito is the fake Madara. But still, he must have got out of the rock avalanche and later wouldn't return to Konoha afterwards. What kept him away? Then Naruto heard the click of the door behind him. He erased everything that was on the computer and slid back into his invisibility jutsu. He watched silently within the room as the Hokage's secretary, Shizune, came in and started fiddling with the computer and printing out some documents of some random shinobi. Naruto took this opportunity to escape the tower because he now had the time to go to another place. Now with the fake Madara's identity in his hands, he had enough time to break into the Yandame's estate and retrieve his jutsu. At the main gate with the knocked-out Izumo and Kotetsu, an ANBU team was surveying the area when their sights landed on the Chunin. One purple-haired cat-masked ANBU gained a tick mark on her forehead because of the supposed laziness of the two ninja. She made her way down and slapped Izumo at the back of the head, yelling, "Wake up." But it didn't work, so she instead started shaking him like a ragdoll until he would awaken from his nap. However, nothing the ANBU tried worked as Izumo was still fast asleep. Realizing that something was wrong, the ANBU called out to her teammates. "Assistance! yelled the ANBU. Her teammates came over to her post-ion and checked over the two shinobi. "They've been knocked out with Jinjutsu," said a bird-masked ANBU with spiky sandy hair as he checked over the unconscious shinobi. "It takes a master at Jinjutsu to do something like this. Whoever did this, their skill in Jinjutsu can rival Kurenai or even Itachi Uchiha. You three will stay here while I report this to the Hokage." Finished the ANBU, in a series of highs was heard before he shunshined to the Hokage's office to inform her of what has happened, and he believed they had just been infiltrated by their enemies. Tsunade was sitting in her office as always. Sakura's training had been pleasing. She had already mastered medical ninjutsu and was now advancing particularly well with her amazing strength. There hadn't been any trouble in the village since that plant-like Akatsuki member that was so interested on dead people. She was brought out of her musings when her ANBU agent, Bird, appeared in her office, kneeling in her office. "Hokage-sama, not 5 minutes ago did my team, and I find the two gate guards, Izumo Kamizuki and Kotetsu Hagane, knocked out by Jinjutsu," spoke the bird-masked ANBU. "What?" questioned/bellowed Tsunade as she stood up from her chair and slammed her hands on her desk. "I quickly deduced that they were knocked out less than an hour and a half ago by a master of Jinjutsu. I think it might be Itachi Uchiha," informed the ANBU. Then another boar-masked ANBU agent appeared in the same kneeling position as the other one. "Hokage-sama, someone has broken into the Yandame's Hokage's private estate," informed a boar-masked ANBU. This was giving Tsunade a terrible migraine, all from those few sentences. "Gather all available ANBU units and get me Team Kurenai, Team Asuma, and Kakashi. If an enemy of the village gets their hands on the Hiraition, then it's bad news for us. Go," roared Tsunade as the ANBU disappeared to confront the intruder. At the Namikaze estate, Naruto was making his way down into his father's library, hoping to gather any useful jutsu, but he needed to get one in particular jutsu that was worth a lot in the long run. Breaking into the estate was easy for him. The outer gate was dotted with different ceiling arrays that he was easily able to destroy, thanks to the Uzumaki clan scrolls Zetsu would retrieve from the ruins of Yuzushiogakure. He knew he had alerted the ANBU of the village, so he had to hurry and retrieve what he wanted. And thank the gods, there it was, sitting on a pedestal, the scroll on how to learn the Hiraition. He opened it up and scanned it with his Sharingan, and it was the real deal. How foolish to just leave one of the most powerful jutsus in the world and showcase it like a trophy. Maybe his father was a prideful being. He heard footsteps behind him and a loud halt. He could sense 3 ANBU members waiting to attack him by how their chakra was flaring. No one he knew from his past, so he could kill them without feeling remorse. What was he thinking? He wouldn't feel remorse even if he killed his own friends. He unsealed 3 kunai from his left wrist and charged them with lightning chakra, increasing their speed and cutting power. He threw them at the ANBU, who had little time to react before they dropped dead with holes in their chests. Ryu ran out of the estate and into courtyard as he tucked the Hiraition scroll away. Then he was surrounded by another team of ANBU going through some fast hand signs. Naruto breathed in and yelled, "Katan, Onodoro, Fire Release, Demon Lantern." And him were Fireball, which took the shape of Oni heads, where they flew at the team of ANBU with great speed. When they hit their targets, they burned the ANBU members, giving them 4th-degree burns from the heat that bypassed their armor, and they were quickly set aflame from the jutsu. He ran some more and came across teams Kurenai and Asuma, who jumped out in front of him. Then Kiba recognized the man as the guy that bumped into him. "Hey, I know you. You're that guy?" yelled Kiba, pointing at Naruto, and got a bark of approval from his partner Akamaru. This got confused looks from everyone minus Choji and Shiakamaru. "So you remember me? You're not as dumb as I first assumed," said Ryu quite harshly, which made Kiba go red in the face and hold out his fist in front of him. "Troublesome," muttered Shikamaru as he combed his hair with his hand. "I can't use the Rasengan, it would give away my identity, and I have to limit the amount of shadow clones I use. This is so troublesome," thought Naruto, which caused Shikamaru to sneeze. Naruto went through some hand signs faster than anyone could see and channeled chakra into his fingers. "Futon, Owakamitsum Taikiatsu no Jutsu, Wind Release, Wolf Claw Cyclone Technique," yelled Naruto as he slashed the air with his left, creating 4 jagged blades of wind that howled like wolves. Everyone there barely got out of the way as the wind blades traveled past them and sawed down 4 trees that were behind them, creating clean-cut chunks of wood. However, Team Kurenai failed to detect 4 other howling blades that were coming at them. Apparently, you can create 8 claws of wind, not 4. The team barely had time to brace themselves for the coming wind, and they were certainly going to die. Doton, Doria Hiki, Earth Release, Earth-style wall, yelled a voice. Then an earth wall with 4 bulldog heads popped up in front of Team Kurenai, protecting them from the wind claws. However, the wind-sharpened blades cut deep into the wall. If it wasn't chakra-enhanced earth, then it would have cut clean through. It was a miracle that the wall held its stability, because it was 1 inch away from penetrating. Kakashi appeared before everyone, his Sharingan blazing and holding a kunai in hand ready to battle the combatant. "Is everyone all right?" asked Kakashi. "Yeah, we're fine," answered Asuma as he jumped next to Kakashi. "Okay, what can you tell me about his guy that I don't already know?" inquired Kakashi, and Shikamaru answered. "His name is Ryu Yoke's." Everyone looked at him with wide eyes, surprised that he even knew the person. "Kiba, Choji, and I bumped into him earlier," continued Shikamaru, which made everyone nod their heads in understanding. "What we have seen already is that he has a wind and fire affinity. That katana on his back signifies at least expertise in Kenjutsu, but other than that we have no idea of his other skills." "All of those are correct, however there are a few things that you left out," said Ryu, but he was interrupted as a tree grew behind his back, and its branches coiled itself around him. "Damn, I was hoping to not reveal my Sharingan, but it looks like I have to if I want to escape this Jinjutsu," thought Naruto sadly, as if he pitied whoever trapped him in a Jinjutsu. Kurenai then appeared from the trunk of the tree, a kunai in hand, ready to slit Naruto's throat. Megan, Hyo Tinshitan, Demonic Illusion, Mirror Heaven and Earth Change, thought Naruto as he looked into Kurenai's eyes. Now it was Kurenai who was trapped by a tree. But that wasn't what shocked her, it was the fact that the man before her had the Sharingan, whispered Kurenai. Kurenai then found herself back in her own body, and she turned her head to see Hinata funneling her chakra into her, breaking her from the Jinjutsu. But she had to relay this new information. It was vital everyone knew about the new development. "Everyone, Jinjutsu doesn't work against him," shouted Kurenai. "Why?" shouted Kiba back. "Because he has the Sharingan," screeched Kurenai. Everyone was immediately shocked by this. Another Sharingan user. But how all the Uchiha corpses were burned so someone wouldn't be able to transplant the Sharingan into their eyes. So how did this guy have it? And who was he really? The wind seemed to react to everyone's shock as it frayed about more frantically. The chin-length strands that framed the sides of Naruto's face fluttered around, and the strands that fell between his eyes and parted at his nose ruffled a little. His black cloak with flame motifs whipped in the air wildly. "Yeah, I have the Sharingan. It was a gift from someone important to me," said Ryu cockily. "Oh yeah, and who?" shouted Kiba. "Why does it matter? The person is dead, just like you're going to be soon," said Naruto darkly. He went through some hand signs. Raitun, Reiju Hashiri Paku no Jutsu, Lightning Release, Beast Running Pack Technique, bellowed Naruto as he held out the palms of his hands as 10 pale wolves made of lightning rushed at the group of shinobi. Naruto was controlling the wolves thanks to lightning chakra connected to his hands, and he was able to control the wolves and have them attack the group of shinobi. Asuma, in gratitude to his quick thinking, saved the lives of his team and Shino by utilizing a wind jutsu. Futon, Kaze and Gai no Jutsu, Wind Release, Wind Dome Technique, yelled Asuma as a wind dome shielded the 5 shinobi. But the others weren't as lucky. The wolves were sharper than katanas, and they easily clawed past everyone else, causing eviscerating damage to all of them. 5 against 10, including Akamaru, wasn't a good number. Whenever they dodged, they were attacked by the striding onslaught of the hounds, and the lightning numbed their bodies, causing them to become slower and their reactions to be slower than they were. How could they escape this? If they didn't escape, they would surely die. Ryu was about to finish them off when a shadow above him caused him to look up, and he was blinded by the light of the sun, where a shadow hovering beyond it could be clearly seen. "Sutenkyaku, Heavenly Foot of Pain," yelled the shadow. Naruto canceled his jutsu, and with his Sharingan narrowly dodged the chakra-enhanced falling axe kick that would have probably crushed his skull. Dust instantly filled the area. It was so thick that only a Hyuga's Byakugan could see through it. Naruto was unfazed by the dust stinging his eyes as he just watched the handiwork of someone he used to call Bachan. When the dust cleared, it revealed the silhouette of Tsunade Senju, the Go-Dame Hokage. Naruto would never forget about that monstrous strength anytime soon. But he just smirked. This day turned out to be quite entertaining and made his day all that more interesting. "Who are you? And why did you attack my ninja?" spoke Tsunade with a voice that proved she was worthy of being a leader. Naruto just smirked. Weren't they the ones that attacked him? He couldn't remember. Deciding to use psychological warfare, he knew of the perfect way to get under her skin and make her lose focus. "Is that all you got? A simple strong axe kick," said Ryu, which caused a frown to appear on Tsunade's face. "I understand that in your old age, you're not as strong as you once were, but I didn't know old age had gotten to you this bad. In fact, I think I see a gray hair or two and maybe a few wrinkles," commented Naruto. Every man in the world silently grimaced for their fellow male for making such a stupid comment. Tsunade's eyes were overshadowed by her hair, and flames of righteous female fury were flickering off her form and scorching the ground. Execute him on the spot," thundered Tsunade. Multiple ANBU that were hidden in the trees jumped out and drew their katanas on the samurai like man. Naruto unsheathed his own katana and channeled his wind affinity through it, marker it a lot sharper. The ANBU soldiers didn't stand a chance as their own katanas were cut in half, and they soon joined the weapons as they were cleaved from the chest to their shoulders, their blood staining the grass they were standing on. Those that witnessed it were shocked at the power this man had as he was taking on the Black Ops as if they were Genin, and to add on somewhat the pyre, he had the Sharingan, which made him even more deadly, as he could clearly see their moves clearly. Then Ryu heard the sound of whistling as two green blurs attacked him, saying dynamic entry. If it wasn't for the prong bracers that Naruto was wearing, protecting him, he'd probably have some broken bones in his arms, which was in Naruto's mind. Not a good development. Naruto flew back a few meters away, and his feet shaved the ground as he regained his footing. "Well, if it isn't the freak with the large eyebrows and his mini-clone," said Ryu scornfully with that annoying smirk of his. This caused Guy and Lee to frown at the nicknames the man gave them. They soon fell into their respective taijutsu stances, ready to combat the man. "Come, Lee, let us fan our flames of youth and show our adversary what it's like to fight taijutsu masters," said Guy. "Oh, and Lee, I'm not sure if anyone has noticed yet, but," said Guy as he whispered in Lee's ear, which was loud enough for everyone to hear, "this man is dangerous." This caused a mass amount of sweat drops to appear on everyone's heads. "Oh, excellent advice, Guy-sensei. I'll write it down," said Lee as he took out a pencil and notebook and started writing down Guy's words. This caused the sweat drops to grow in size. Then Guy socked Lee across the face and shouting, "You idiot. You don't have time to write when you're in the middle of a battle," said Guy proudly and with a glint in his pearly white teeth. Even more excellent advice, I'll write it down," said Lee as he continued writing, not minding that his teacher had hit him. Ryu was watching from his position, slightly amused. If they weren't shinobi, then they would be good clowns in a circus performance. From behind Naruto, a large force of 20 ANBU came rushing towards him. He sealed his katana in his right hand seal and went through some hand signs ending on the tiger sign. Katan, Bakufu Ranbu, Fire Release, Blast Wave Wild Dance, shouted Naruto as he expelled fire from his mouth, creating a massive, spiraling fire vortex. The ANBU were trapped within the vortex of intense heat and flames. They had nowhere to go, or they would be burned by the intense holocaust. When Ryu ended his justice, he saw all the destruction he created. Only the ashes of the ANBU were left. Using this time to escape, Naruto deactivated his weight seals that were placed on his gloves, boots, and belt. And he took off at breakneck speeds that even amazed Guy and Lee. Naruto was jumping across the buildings and architecture of his home village, intent on leaving as his position was compromised. One more ANBU soldier appeared in front of him with kunai in hand, but Naruto went through some hand seals to quickly silence his life. Raitun, Hekarekarayan Shigekiha, Lightning Release, Thunderline Shockwave, yelled Naruto as he held out his hand as a wave-like vortex made of lightning with the head of a lion in the center hit the ANBU head-on, as the unfortunate shinobi was obliterated by the lightning. Ryu continued running out of the village without any interference. "My Segekure no Jutsu," thought Naruto as he disappeared while running through the village. The Konoha forces that were chasing after him lost his presence not long after he used his jutsu because of the invisibility it offered him. Tsunade watched as the black-clad man vanished from everyone's sight. The last thing she saw was the symbol on the back of his coat. The image was a battle-ready black dragon, eager to accept any challenge. "Kuro Ryu, Black Dragon," she said within her mind as the dragon symbol disappeared along with the person wearing the coat. Tsunade and her forces stopped their pursuit because that had just seemingly lost any trace of the intruder. "Umbu, take all the wounded to the hospital and have Asuma and Shikamaru meet me in my office in 10 minutes. Commanded Tsunade, and the Yanbiyu teams shunshined away, taking the wounded to the hospital. 10 minutes later, after Kakashi, Kurenai, Hinata, and Kiba, along with Akamaru, were taken to the hospital to have emergency surgery. Tsunade was in her office, and standing before her were Asuma and Shikamaru, the top two ranking officers that faced the Black Dragon without any injuries. "Tell me everything you learned about this Ryu Yoke's when battling with him," ordered Tsunade, and Shikamaru stepped forward ready to answer her. "From what we learned from our fight Hokage-sama, is that Ryu Yoke's has 3 nature affinities: fire, wind, and lightning, and he displayed immense control over each," said Shikamaru. He also seemed adept at Jinjutsu as he used the Kyo Tenshiden against Kurenai Zenshai with relative ease, but I'm not sure if he did that himself or the Sharingan did it for him. "Oh, and yeah, he has the Sharingan," said Shikamaru. But everyone in the room thought he just said he had the Sharingan. Then Asuma stepped forward and he took a drag out of his cigarette. "From what I was able to observe, is that he has extraordinary stealth and infiltration skills, as he was able to slip past the Anbu in the village with effortless skill, coupled with the fact that he is a master at Fuinjutsu, as he was able to get into the Yondaime Hokage's estate, which is known for having every kind of defense seal there is. He was also a master at Kenjutsu, as well as the way he wielded that katana had the look of a master with years of experience. We weren't able to see taijutsu skills because we engaged him in long-ranged attacks, but his speed was tremendous as he outran Guy and Lee easily and dodged your chakra-enhanced falling axe kick," informed Asuma, "and he used psychological warfare to great effort when he called you old," said Asuma, and Tsunade gained a tick mark, but right now this was not the time to be punching Asuma through a wall, and he's quite the smartass. Tsunade sighed. This man. Everything they learned about him, about the dragon, spoke of a man trained in every art of shinobi combat and warfare, a man trained to kill. "And what of his physical appearance?" asked Tsunade. "We weren't able to get much because he wore a hood that shadowed most of his face," said Shikamaru. "But I will tell you what I know. He has light skin, in between tanned and pale and sun-kissed golden blonde hair." "Is that it?" asked Tsunade. "Yeah," replied Shikamaru. "The physical information wasn't much, but it was useful enough." "Okay, I will be adding Ryu Yoke's into the bingo book immediately since he was able to kill numerous Anbu and critically injure Kakashi. I will be placing him as a high-ranked shinobi in the bingo book," said Tsunade. "Shizune," called Tsunade to her assistant, and Shizune came running into the room with a frantic look on her face. "Yes, Tsunade-sama," asked Shizune. "Create a profile on everything we have collected on Ryu Yoke's," commanded Tsunade as she folded her arms under her sizable bust. "Yes, Tsunade-sama," acknowledged Shizune. Tsunade let her thoughts wander. She was just hoping that Ryu Yoke's didn't acquire what she hoped he didn't acquire. A few days later, Zetsu was reading the latest update on the Konoha's bingo book, but only one shinobi really caught his attention. Name: Ryu Yoke's. Title: Kuro Ryu, Black Dragon. Gender: male. Ninja rank: S rank. Age: unknown. Physical description and clothing: light-skinned and sun-kissed golden hair. Wears black samurai-like armor and a black coat with bright red flame motifs on the tattered edges, along with 6 magatama on the cloak's collar and light blue rope belt. Has a symbol of a black, battle-ready dragon on the back of the cloak. Wanted for mass murder, robbery, failed assassination of a Kage, Attempted murder of various Konoha nin. Skills. 3 nature affinities: fire, wind, and lightning. Well versed in multiple high-ranking ninjutsu and multiple high-ranking unknown ninjutsu. Taijutsu is unknown except for incredibly fast speed. Jinjutsu is a known master of Jinjutsu. Master at Fuinjutsu. Master at stealth assassination and infiltration. Keki Jinkai, Sharingan. Warning: engage with extreme caution. Wanted dead or alive, 90 million Ryo. Well, Naruto doesn't take long to draw attention to himself, said the white half. Yes, already he has become an strength shinobi in the bingo books, and his bounty is admirable too. Said the black Zetsu, should we inform Pain that we have found the potential recruit? Said white Zetsu. Yes, although did he have to reveal his Sharingan? It was too soon to reveal his trump card. Complained black Zetsu at the thought of revealing such impertinent information. Pain was looking over Amigakure again, just watching his people go by. Zetsu had yet to find the promising recruit that he would recruit into the Akatsuki, and Nagato's patience was wearing thin. Then Konan walked into the room, her blank gaze on Yahiko's corpse which acted as the main body of Pain. Has Zetsu contacted you about the potential recruit? Asked Pain. Yes, Zetsu has told me of the candidate, and he's even given me the new edition of Konoha's bingo book. On page 9 is our potential recruit, said Konan as she opened the book to the appropriate page. His name is Ryu Yokeis, said Konan, and then she listed down the skills and qualities of Ryu, and Nagato listened intently to what she had to say. Zetsu has the perfect eye for talent. Not only that, but he has the Sharingan. He could make the perfect asset. Have Zetsu enlist the aid of Ryu Yokeis immediately, commanded Pain in his stoic persona, a little eager to meet the ninja known as Yokeis. Very well, said Konan as she walked out the room through the door to meet up with Zetsu. Pain gazed out at Amigakure, contemplating the next move of the Akatsuki. In a few months they would be hunting the Bijou, so to create a weapon that would bring about peace through pain. He finally made it. All that running and walking, and now he was back at the mountain's graveyard. His mission was a success. He found out the identity of the fake Madara, Obito Uchiha, and retrieved the Hiration, while finally testing his power against the shinobi of the leaf, and he was pleased with the results. This was one thrilling day for him. But he knew that his work wasn't finished, it had only just begun. Then Zetsu appeared next to him in his usual manner and said, "Welcome to the Akatsuki / welcome to the Akatsuki," said the two halves at the same time. Naruto smiled to himself, his signature dark, sickly smiles. Now it was time to dispose of the fake Madara and become one step closer to achieving the Eye of the Moon plan. It was all going according to plan.